Hello, everyone. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in MHA with the Jujutsu Gacha system, Part 5. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
Hey, did you hear? All of Class 1A was expelled. Like, on the first day. Shit. Really? Is that allowed? Apparently. The teachers here have much more freedom to do what they want. That's UA for you. Gossip filled the cafeteria loudly, all of which revolved around the hot-button topic of the expulsion of every student in Class 1A. Everyone was either talking about it or trying to dig up more details. Aizawa doesn't play around. Hey, scrub, I said, looking at my frozen classmate, Konya Toshio. You still upset you didn't make it into Class 1A? I then took a bite of my onigiri as he mechanically looked over to me. Plus 5 SP. That could have been me. I could have been expelled on the first day. Toshio said dramatically as he held his chest as if in pain. This must be fate. I was placed in Class 1D so I could one day take up one of those empty spots in Class 1A. This guy must be off his medication. Aha. I ignored him and turned to Himiko, who was happily munching away at some fried rice beside me. Sitting to her left was that black-haired girl from yesterday, Ogasawara Hikari. Feeling my gaze, she turned to me and jumped. She then raised her arms over her flat as a board chest and turned away. The hell? Does she think I'm ogling her or something? If I were to ogle someone here, it would be midnight. I have no interest in those empty, flat fields of yours. Today was the second day of our UA high school career and the official start of our elite education. Yesterday didn't count because it was mostly about our course introductions and orientation. Principal Nezu's speech made up for a large portion of the morning. He mostly spoke about how excited he was at overseeing our development and what kinds of heroes, support innovators, or even future scholars would all be. After that, we all just meandered through the day. During our extensive free period to get familiar with the school's curriculum, several of my classmates had already created and joined their own cliques. The so-called attractive and strong students created one for themselves, composed of 7 students. The rest broke off into their little groups and whatnot. Unfortunately, I somehow found myself in a group filled with weirdos. Said weirdos were as follows. Konya Toshio was an odd and possibly schizophrenic guy with dreams of grandeur. He believes with his entire soul that it's only a matter of time before he becomes a great hero despite his piss-poor quirk. Ogasawara Hikari was a short, friendly girl who made quick friends with Himiko. She also seemed to think of me as a sketchy character who wanted to do illicit things to her. Dream on, girl. Ike Mitsuko was a red-haired, orange-eyed cat girl who loved to talk about manga and anime non-stop. She had little care for those who thought anime was for children. Due to that, most of the class paid her no mind. But I thought she was chill. Finally, Hoshino Juru. He was a tall mountain of endless joy and charisma who saw the best in everyone. He also loved to talk about working out and all things muscles. A bit naive, that one. These 4 people sat around Himiko and me at a lunch table at the back of the cafeteria. War. This week's chapter was so intense. Mitsuko cried as she closed this week's newest jump. To believe that Goku-san was the legendary Super Saiyan. So epic. He's come a long way from being the young boy who fought off the Red Ribbon Army. Goku? From that manga, Dragon Ball Z. Juru looked up from his protein-heavy lunch and flexed. I've heard my little brother talk about him a lot. He sure has some impressive muscles. He sure does. Mitsuko nodded. If anything, you should stop growing your muscles, Juru-kun, Himiko said as she pointed at the struggling button on his blazer. Otherwise, your blazer is gonna pop. Ha ha. Worry not, Toga-chan. I have several spares in my locker. Despite being surrounded by a unique group of classmates, I was thankful that they didn't treat Himiko any differently because of her quirk. While not everyone shot her a disgusted look during our introductions yesterday, I could hear several comments throughout the class calling her quirk disgusting. Even at UA, there were still rude and discriminatory people. They just concealed their attitudes better here. Shimizu-kun. Here, I don't like my broccoli, so you can have it. Mitsuko said as she dropped her vegetables on my tray without waiting for my reply. Oi. I'm not your waste bin where you can dump the food you don't want. Also, what are you? 5. Eat your veggies. I said as I began eating the broccoli despite my words. I wasn't about to turn down some of Lunch Rush's delicious food. Plus 5 SP. Huh? No way. They're gross. You are a 5-year-old. After lunch, classes began as in any other school. Due to being in Gen Ed, the majority of our teachers were non-heroes and experts in their respective fields. They were great at teaching and explaining their subjects to us all. I could see how attending UA's Gen Ed course all but guaranteed one's admission to the college or university of their choosing. The education here was second to none. Still, this didn't mean I wasn't bored out of my mind. I've grown so used to avoiding school thanks to my clones, but that was something I couldn't do anymore. Being in such a place full of SP potential, I had to be the one to attend in order to rake in the points due to my clones not being able to earn them for me by proxy. Shimizu-kun. Unconsciously, my hand flew up and caught a flying piece of chalk that would have hit my head. Breaking out of my daydreaming of nap pin under a tree, I looked forward and saw my very annoyed teacher. All around me, I received annoyed and amused expressions from my classmates. 5 times 20 is equal to plus 100 SP. Since you want to stare out of the window so much, how about you answer this question, Shimizu-kun? My math teacher, Yamaka Saki, said as she pointed at the rather intricate question on the chalkboard. With a quick read-through, I leaned on my right hand and stared at her lazily. It's 1/6, 0.166, or 0.167. With a sigh, Saki nodded and turned back to her chalkboard. That's correct. Good work, Shimizu-kun. But please, pay attention to the class. Sure thing, teach. Plus 5 SP, call me sensei, Shimizu-kun. I guess he is smart. I heard one of my classmates whisper to their desk mates. He did get second place on the written exam, after all. Was another student's reply. I guess that explains how someone like him got into UA then. Is this casual racism or casual discrimination? Wait, those are the same thing. I felt Himiko bristle in anger from behind me as the class's lesson resumed. Reaching back, I patted her hands to calm her down. I looked down at my notebook and quickly wrote down what our teacher was explaining with little issue. As I did, I missed the look of interest from one of my classmates. A rather handsome, tall young man with grey hair and electric pink eyes stared at me before turning back to the lesson. General POV. The complete breakdown of Kabashigawa's empire and the destruction of the Shai Heiseikai. Our dear friend Sukuna has been rather busy. Deep within his dark lab, All for One swiped through several dozen photos showing off the destruction at Kabashigawa's mansion and the utter devastation left behind by the battle between Overhaul and Sukuna, which resulted in the utter annihilation of the Florum ward, leaving behind a 100-meter-wide area of nothing. Kurogiri. All for One said without turning around. Appearing behind him was a person whose entire body seemed to be made out of a dark purple mist, save for his eyes, which were a glowing yellow. The man, who was made of mist, wore a very elegant suit with a tie and a metal brace that went from around his collarbone to just below his eyes. Yes, Master. I believe it's time I finally see what the King of Curses is capable of myself. All for One grinned as he focused on a lone image of Sukuna, who was dressed in his black hari and white kimono outfit. You mean? Kurogiri muttered as he realized his master's intentions. Yes. Let the doctor know that I will be using that one. All for One chuckled as he leaned back in his chair, his right fist under his cheek. Let's see firsthand what Sukuna can do and if he is truly worthy of my attention. Shimizu Sautapiri. You have pulled Kurorushi's cursed tool, the Festering Life Sword. Rank, Platinum. Whistling from behind my new mask, I lifted the short, thick, cleaver-like sword with a unique shape and a grotesque design. If memory serves me right, this was quite possibly one of the most powerful weapons in all of JJK. The Festering Life Sword's most prominent feature was the 6 distinct firing barrels on the front of the blade that could launch close-range projectiles at its target. Even if the sword is blocked by an opponent's weapon, It's capable of shooting small eggs into the enemy's flesh to infect them. Shortly after being embedded into the target's skin, the eggs hatch, and small insect-like curses spawn from the wound. The same effect occurs if the blade slashes the target directly as well. During its fight with Yuta, Kurourushi had managed to land a few strikes with this sword, resulting in cursed insects exploding out of Yuta's body violently. It was only due to Yuta's excellent fighting prowess and RCT that he was able to survive the attack. If he had fought any other sorcerer besides Yuta, Kurourushi would have won. This means that the only way to survive a blow from this sword is to have RCT or an extremely powerful regenerative ability. Even with the latter ability, the cursed insects would continue to multiply within you. The victim would have to remove the body part where the sword struck before the insects had the chance to spread. Talk about OP. I grinned at the blade and placed it within Zyko, causing the worm Shikigami to shudder. We have just enough points for 2 more pulls. Use 1500 SP. I reached out and twisted the gacha machine's dial. Soon enough, a nice glowing prize ball popped out. You have pulled Yeri Shoko's RCT proficiently. Rank: Diamond. Hey, I muttered as my brain downloaded everything Shoko knew about RCT. Raising my hand, I focused my RCT and watched as waves of white flowed around my hand. So that's how you heal others. I gotta say, it sure is complicated. Using my remaining points, I twisted the dial and waited. You have pulled Yuro Takako's cursed technique, Sky Manipulation. Rank: Diamond. Ooh, that's a good one, I said with a grin and dismissed the gacha machine. Today has been a very lucky day for me. Still, I could do without winning Maimai's panties. With my gambling session now over, I looked around at the knocked out bodies of the 4 debt collectors who thought they could do as they pleased. Off to the side, a battered and bruised young man around 25 years old sat knocked out against his living room wall. All around him was broken furniture and thrown appliances. Ever since my encounter with a little girl whose mother was killed by greedy debt collectors, I decided to make my presence known to each and every collection agency in the country. I began tracking down all of their organizations' hideouts after extracting the information from their underlings. While I would have rather gotten rid of these debt collection groups in their entirety, I knew it was an impossible task. Sure, I could kill them all, but in time, more would pop back up. Similar to a hydra. So, to begin my new operation, I focused on the more violent debt collectors who used terror and violence to collect their money. I made it clear to everyone in their line of work that this approach of collecting their money would be met with violence and retribution by me. On the other end, I was more lenient to the ones who collected their debts with a softer approach. Even with my involvement, there were still some people and groups who went against my warnings and got violent with those who owed the money, like these 4 bozos around me. Whenever that happened, I quickly found them thanks to my hundreds of crows all around the country and made an example out of them. Looks like I just found 4 new test subjects for the festering life sword. But first, let's do a little test. Kneeling down, I placed my right hand over one of the debt collector's chests and began channeling RCT into his body. While I knew that normal cursed energy had a negative, almost poisonous effect on the humans of this world, I wondered what positive cursed energy would do. Soon enough, the man's wounds began to heal. Good. It seems that RCT doesn't have any adverse effects on the people in this world. Moving over to the beaten young man that these men had beaten to near death, I used RCT to heal him enough so that his ribs weren't stabbing into his lungs. When I was done, I grabbed the debt collectors' wallets and threw down their money on the ground. Here you go. Don't spend it all in one place, I said to the knocked out young man before collecting all 4 of the debt collectors' bodies. The next day, all 4 of them were found by the members of their agency and their boss. Their bodies were torn and ruined by dozens of hungry insects, leaving their corpses a bloody and ruined mess. Safe to say, they quickly fell in line. Unknown to me at the time, my actions were beginning to have a ripple effect on the criminal underworld. The name Sukyuna was beginning to have more than one effect. Instead of just causing fear and dread within all those who heard it, my name was now garnering respect and admiration from several individuals and groups. Eat up, you 3. You earned it. Nodding tiredly, Izuku, Keiko, and Hitoshi all gave thanks and began eating the large bowls of beef gyudon before them. Smiling, I picked up my own bowl and ate as well. Our isolated training ground, composed of a grass field with surrounding trees, offered us a nice pocket of peace. Izuku and Keiko were both covered in bruises and dirt from their usual training regime. Hitoshi himself was in a worse-off state because he had just recently started my training from hell. Due to there only being one short year left for them to prepare for the UA entrance exam, they had asked me to up their training as high as I deemed safe. Sadly, they quickly regretted that decision of theirs due to the dozens of new aching pains throughout their bodies. Despite the pain, they were making significant progress on their bodies and abilities, respectively. Izuku's body was now a wall of tight, well-packed muscles that could make any personal trainer proud. His reflexes and combat abilities were second to none. While he may not yet be a master at any of the martial arts I taught him, he was quickly getting there. Give him another 5 years, and he'd be able to give me a somewhat decent fight. I had no doubts in my mind that when he got one for all, he'd be able to use at least 15 to 25% of its power right off the bat. Keiko's progress was remarkable as well. Due to all her hard work and Izuku's advice, she's been able to make fantastic progress with her quirk. As we suspected, she was now able to use her once defensive barriers in several offensive and creative ways. She could even manipulate a barrier beneath her to allow her to essentially fly around like a hoverboard. To add to her quirk training, I also had her up her speed and strength training as well. I even had her learn Wing Chun as well. I didn't want her to find herself in a situation where she would be defenseless if her quirk was somehow unusable or locked away. Her progress in learning the martial art was slow, but she was getting there. Finally, my newest mound of clay, Hitoshi, was a rather interesting person to train. He was definitely no prodigy in hand-to-hand combat or a physical beast. No, he was actually rather slow at learning the things I taught him. However, this didn't mean he was falling behind. No. The purple-haired kid was a hard worker. Much like Bruce Lee's saying goes, Hitoshi didn't practice 10,000 kicks once. He practiced one kick 10,000 times. I sometimes stuck around after I dismissed everyone and watched as he continued his own training into the wee hours of the night. The kid definitely had a heroic spirit. It was just hidden away by his demeanor and mannerisms. That spirit of his would help push him much farther than most. Not to mention his relatively strong quirk. Brainwashing. In order for his quirk to work, Hitoshi only needed to have his opponent answer his question once to ensure his victory. So, after much brainstorming between Izuku, Keiko, and me, we all came up with several ways to help Hitoshi improve his meta ability. One way was for him to learn how to throw his voice around in order to better trap his opponents into answering him. Another was to have him wear a mask with a voice modulator that would change his voice. This would allow him to confuse and trick his targets into answering him even if they knew how his quirk worked, and I already had my working on a prototype. We even tested to see if using a voice recorder with his voice would still activate his quirk. Much like how Inumaki did during the fight against Sukyuna in order to freeze the King of Curses just enough to be caught in a domain. And if the mind-controlled Izuku was anything to go off by, it was a resounding success. Everything hurts. Keiko muttered as she placed some of the lunch I bought everyone into her mouth. But this food sorta makes up for it. My legs are still shaking, Hitoshi said as he massaged his aching shins. I'm gonna feel this in the morning. Izuku nodded and swallowed. Try an ice bath. That helped me during the first few months. Hold on, months. Hitoshi swallowed as he stared at Izuku and Keiko in horror, who nodded with dead expressions. What did I get myself into? Grinning, I reached out and patted his shoulder. You'll be fine. No pain, no gain, right? I guess. Pain was all I knew. I have nightmares of you, Su-chan. I chuckled at their pained expressions as I brought out 3 more packed bowls of food. You say that now, but look at you 3. You 2 are a lot stronger than you were at the beginning. I'm sure you 2 will be little monsters once you enter UA. I said to Izuku and Keiko, who blushed at my praise. I then turned to Hitoshi. And you, Hitoshi. You may have just started, but I'm certain you'll catch up with them soon. Just keep working hard. Plus 25 SP, plus 10 SP, plus 25 SP. Ah, right, Hitoshi muttered and scooped the remaining food in his bowl into his mouth to hide his red face. Thank you, Sauta-san. It's all thanks to your help. Izuku said with a smile while Keiko nodded in agreement. That's right, Su-chan. We couldn't have gotten this far without you. Keiko said with a warm smile. So please continue to look after us. Yeah. You got it. Plus 30 SP, plus 15 SP, plus 35 SP. Leaning back, I watched them eat with a small, proud smile on my face. Despite the rather greedy origins of how our relationship started, I was glad I decided to help these three out. Not only due to the points but also because of the hardships that would come their way in 1 year. They needed to be ready for what was coming. Dig deeper, I said to another me who wasn't one of my clones or a twice clone. The energy is there. You just have to grasp it. I'm trying. It's almost as if it doesn't want to do what I say. Himiko said in my voice as she tried to bring out the minimal amount of cursed energy within her. Sighing in defeat, she leaned back and stared at the darkening sky. I'm sorry, Sukuna-kun. I don't think I can do it. I can use Jin-kun and Kainyo-nichan's quirks just fine, but when it comes to your curse energy, it just doesn't want to listen to me. Ignoring how weird it was to hear my voice talk in such a feminine cadence, I nodded and wondered why she couldn't use CE. She had it within her. At least, her transformed body did. So why couldn't she use it? Could it have to do with your soul? I muttered as I remembered how much the soul came into effect within the world of JJK. Could being born with CE be a factor? Did CE have to be an integral part of a person's being to be used? How confusing. I would know this for sure once I pulled Mahito's inane technique, Idol Transfiguration, which would allow me to be able to see and manipulate a soul. But I hadn't had much luck at pulling that technique thus far. I could get lucky and pull a skill that would allow me to see a soul, like how Yuji or Sukuna could. I suppose there's not much we can do, I said as I walked over to Himiko, who was now dissolving away my appearance. I held a hand out to her and lifted her to her feet. Even after she was standing, she held onto my hand with a slight frown. Sorry, I couldn't use it, Himiko said with disappointment. Pulling away, I patted her shoulder with a smile. It's fine. I guess I really am the only one who can use CE. At least for now. I guess so. Himiko muttered as we made our way toward the main house from our courtyard. Sliding open the shoji door, we came upon a rather amusing sight. Jin was currently in a heated debate with Kaina over where a large segment of Legos would go while Larry happily built a spaceship of Legos. Behind them stood a large box with a picture of a castle. I'm telling you this part goes here, Jin said as he tried to place the piece in his hand down onto a half-built foundation. Kaina placed her hand over his face and pushed him back. No, you clown. The instructions say it goes on the other side. Screw those instructions. Legos are meant for creative freedom. Jin said as Eri began adding wheels to her spaceship. See. Look at Eri-chan. She gets it. Are you blind? It's supposed to be a castle. Not whatever it is you're trying to build. Kaina pointed over at the box where the image of a colorful castle sat. What did we walk into? Himiko asked with a giggle as Kaina threw the instructions into Jin's face, causing the man to fall back dramatically. I don't know, I said as Eri continued to play peacefully while both adults began throwing Legos at one another. But it's gonna make a great Christmas card. I then pulled out my phone and took several photos. General Poi, blinking tiredly, Aizawa Shota walked through the early morning streets of Musutafu on his way to work. Since I have no students to teach, maybe I'll take a nap all the way until lunch? Yeah, that sounds good. Shota thought as he passed by several people heading to work, school, or early morning runs walks. Due to his status as an underground hero, no one recognized him as a pro hero. Something that he found to be completely okay. Shota didn't care much about all the unnecessary attention. This also meant that the majority of the UA student body who weren't already familiar with him would not be aware he was a teacher. Who's this bum? Should we call someone? I mean, he shouldn't be here, right? Sir, do you want me to show you the way out? This ended up being the case with the now expelled Class 1A. Shota didn't find some of those comments confusing him with a homeless man to be very amusing. So he ended up taking a small amount of joy after he expelled all 20 of his students after finding zero potential in them. At some of their crying faces, he did end up feeling slightly bad before getting over it. If those kids couldn't handle something as simple as a quirk apprehension test, then they would have no chance of surviving the grueling world of pro heroes. Even so, all 20 of the students he expelled should be finding out that their expulsion was a ruse sometime today. Hopefully, his wake-up call would get them to start taking UA more seriously. He was glad he was able to talk Principal Nezu into granting him the ability to expel and re-enroll all of his students. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't be able to scare his students straight. It also had the side effect of granting him the largest expulsion rate in UA history. At least on paper. Maybe I'll get a coffee, Shota muttered as he came to a stop to watch an alleyway cat jump out of a trash bin with a small piece of meat in its mouth. Stop. Help. He stole my purse. Sighing in irritation, Shota looked across the street and watched a tall, hooded man sprinting down the street with a white purse in his arms. Down the sidewalk was a short, older woman with an antenna on her head who was desperately looking around for help. Several bystanders stood frozen and simply watched as the man ran off. Not a single one of them moved to help or provide any aid for the frantic older woman. Just my luck. Crime before my morning coffee, Shota said as he prepared his capture tape. Just as he was about to sprint after the criminal, he noticed two students dressed in UA's blazers in the criminal's path. The taller of the two stepped in front of the criminal with his hands in his pockets and performed a sweeping low kick that sent the hooded man flying through the air. In a snap, the boy snatched the purse right out of the man's grasp. The student's unruly black hair swayed as he stood up and walked over to the downed man, the white purse now in his grasp. The blonde girl beside him just watched without worry before walking off down the sidewalk toward the older woman. Should I step in? Shota thought as he grew just close enough to be able to act should things get dangerous, but a small part of him that witnessed the black-haired boy's move stopped him. The way the student moved was quick, flawless, and with high precision. No, as long as he doesn't use his quirk. It should be fine. Let's see what this kid can do. The hooded man quickly stood up with an angry look on his bird-like face as he noticed the purse he stole was no longer in his possession. Finding it in the young boy's hand, the criminal moved toward him to take it back with a desperate look. What Shota witnessed next was impressive. The boy effortlessly dodged the man's swiping, taloned hands. He then pulled the birdman's hood over his head, causing him to lean forward. Grabbing the man's left bicep, the student pulled him in and kicked out his leading leg, effectively tripping him. After the man fell onto the ground, the student pulled the thief's right arm behind his back and pressed his left knee over their wrist, locking them into place. The man tried to wrestle his way out of the student's grip, but it seemed that despite his age and size, the student was much stronger than him. All of that without using his quirk, at least seemingly. Shota muttered as he watched two police officers jog over to the scene with the blonde girl and older woman trailing behind. The officers instructed the student to step away from the thief as they quickly bent down and fastened handcuffs around the man's wrists. Shota observed as the blonde student helped the elderly woman walk over to where the black-haired student was. Seeing her, he then returned her purse with an easygoing grin. The woman expressed her gratitude to both of them before the officers approached to ask questions about what had occurred. Interesting, Shota thought as he turned around and continued on his way to UA. I'll keep an eye out for those two. Especially the one with black hair. Going off their uniforms, it seems like they're first-year general education students. I wonder what quirk he has. Quirk development and practical combat. UA offered 2 quirk focus classes for students in general education, even if they weren't part of the hero course. Unlike the hero course, which included daily quirk and combat focus classes, these classes met only once a week, with the quirk development and practical combat classes alternating with each other. This week was the practical combat class, where we were allowed to use our quirks against one another under the supervision of our teacher, Ectoplasm. Good work, you two. Ectoplasm nodded at 2 of my classmates. They smiled at the hero's praise and walked off the training pad. Okay, you two are next. Right. Get ready to lose. In front of me, a nervous Ogasawara Hikari and a confident Ishimoto Keiichi walked forward and stepped onto the training pad. Looking around, My class was within one of the somewhat over-the-top and impressive training rooms south of UA's campus where all of the practical training took place. Off to the side was an array of workout equipment and combat gear. To the back were several more training pads where the rest of my classmates were using their quirks to fight one another with a clone of ectoplasm watching over them. I focused on the ongoing fight between Himiko and some blue-haired guy, who seemed to have large mechanical boxing gloves over his steel arms. She weaved in and out from her opponent's jabs with practiced ease, using her great speed and agility. Seeing this, the blue-haired guy, Yamazaki Kazuhiro, began to grow agitated that he couldn't land a strike on what he thought was a weak opponent. Atta girl. Focusing back on the ongoing fight in front of me, I watched Hikari squeak as a brown-haired tiger pounced after her. The brown-haired tiger was actually Ishimoto Keiichi. His quirk, Animal Shifter, allowed him to transform into any living animal from the animal kingdom for a solid 60 seconds. The downside to his quirk was that once transformed, he couldn't switch to any other animal or change back before the full 60 seconds were up. In a rush, Hikari used an ink pen to draw on a large sketchpad. Exploding in a burst of ink from her sketchpad was another tiger made entirely of ink. Seeing this, Keiichi's eyes grew wide in surprise before the ink tiger pounced on him. Hikari's quirk, Ink to Existence, allowed her to bring anything she could draw to life. Usually, this would be a pretty powerful meta ability, but it seemed that her constructs were only as strong as herself, which ended up being the reason why Keiichi was able to quickly overpower her construct with a swipe of his claws. Just as he was about to attack a panicking Hikari, his body transformed back into his human form, resulting in him being thrown out of the training pad due to being in a mid-lunge. Gah! Dang it! Keiichi punched the ground in irritation as he turned to a shocked but pleased Hikari. You just got lucky. Got that? Do you happen to be a sore loser, Ishimoto-kun? After they walked off the training pad, Ectoplasm called my training partner and me up. Strolling over to the pad with my hands in my pockets, I inspected my soon-to-be opponent. She had long orange hair tied into twin tails with ribbons. She was relatively well-developed with a pretty face. Her name was Muraka Kohaku. She was apparently the daughter of some big-time CEO who worked for one of Japan's largest support gear companies. I can't believe I have to waste this week's combat class on a normie like you, Kohaku muttered as she gave me the stink eye. With a stomp of her foot, a stone golem rose from the ground and stomped its way over to me. Well. I'll just make this quick and move on to my next opponent. Normie, I said with a raised brow. That's a new one. +5 SP. Seeing the stone golem, Ectoplasm turned to me with a worried look. Shimizu-kun, is this an opponent you're comfortable combating? It's fine. Teach. I took piano and calligraphy growing up. I rolled my shoulders and eyed the golem with interest. Despite her bitchy attitude, she does have a pretty cool quirk. I turned to Kohaku and saw a bead of sweat on the side of her face. Even now, it seems she's using a good chunk of energy just to keep it standing. +10 SP. Very well then. If you are comfortable with this, then you both may begin. Ectoplasm said as he backed away from the center of the training pad. Behold, the power of my glorious golem. Kohaku said with a wide grin as she sent her golem toward me. The large stone summon stomped its way over with loud thuds, gaining the attention of our other classmates who were waiting for their turns. Punch him. I hopped to the side as the golem swung its large stone arm over where I once stood. Grunting, Kohaku then ordered her golem to chase after me in order to punch me again. This thing doesn't have the ability to think or act on its own. Its movements are entirely dependent on its master's commands. Hey, princess. Is this really the best you can do? I called out as I effortlessly danced around the golem's attacks with my hands still in my pockets. Sweating in exertion, Kohaku blushed in embarrassment at my nickname for her as she struggled to command her to summon to hit me. I thought one of the class's most popular and strong students was capable of more than this snooze fest. +5 SP, shut up. Kohaku screamed with a red face as she swung her arm in the air. Crush him. Crush that annoying bug already. At her loud commands, the golem upped its speed and power. Grinning, I flipped over low sweep and used its thick arms to run up onto its shoulders. Leaping over it, I looked down at Kohaku's surprised face and moved right at her. With little issue, I spun around her and clamped my hand over her mouth. Plus 10 SP. There we go. No orders, no movement. I said as I watched the stone golem freeze. Your loss, princess, I whispered into her ear, causing her to shiver. I then made a chopping motion over her head and looked over to an impressed ectoplasm. The match is over. The victory is Shimizu-kun's. Letting the fuming rich girl go, I watched as a stone golem crumbled into rubble. If only Kohaku were able to get around the limitations of her quirk, she would be a pretty formidable opponent. 5 times 10 is equal to plus 50 SP. Shit. Again. How is he doing that? For a quirkless guy, he's somehow able to win every match. You think he's cheating? Nah. My brother is a black belt in karate, so I can tell Shimizu is a very proficient fighter. He's just that good. I funneled out my classmates' comments and turned to Kohaku, who was angry and blushing. She stomped in front of me and pointed a finger at my face. How rude. Plus 10 SP, rude. She roared. How dare you touch my lips like that? How am I supposed to find a suitable husband after having my lips smothered by you? Hear me. I will win our next match. That I swear, Shimizu. What happened to Normie? I tilted my head and pushed her finger away. Kohaku looked away and began walking off. I never called you that. If you say so. Hey, Sauta-kun. Himiko said in a low voice as she leaned her chin on my left shoulder. Her eyes were closed while a wide, tight smile spread over her face. You're not becoming one of those guys, are you now? What did I do? Wait, what does she mean by those guys? No. I muttered as I looked over where Kazuhiro lay unconscious and surrounded by a few of our fellow classmates. At my answer, her somehow glowing eyes stared into my soul. Great. General POV. In there. Move it. Dressed in a blue two-piece jumpsuit, Shuji Saito stepped through the door one of the detention center's guards held open. Walking inside the small room, Saito saw a well-dressed man sitting behind the room's lone bolted-down table. Hearing the room door close, the man dressed in a tan three-piece suit looked up and noticed his client's arrival. Ah. Saito-kun. I've been waiting so long to finally meet you, my boy. Standing up, the man walked over and shook Saito's hand. My name is Gakia Soru. Who are you? Staring at the man in confusion, Saito looked at the briefcase and stacked documents on the table. Grinning, Soru patted Saito's shoulders and led him to a chair. Of course. You must have no idea who I am. But worry not, I know all about you, my boy. Soru said as he sat down in front of Saito. Grabbing a folder from his briefcase, Soru flipped through several pages and landed on one specific document. Let's see. Lying to the police, conspiracy, defamation, and the cherry on top, assault. Those are some grave crimes, my boy. Fortunately, you have one of Japan's finest criminal lawyers on your side. Lawyer? You're my lawyer. Saito blinked in confusion as he stared at Soru with hope. Did my parents hire you? I knew they hadn't given up on me. Are you going to help me get out of here? Indeed I am. I've been working day and night to get you out of this dump for several weeks. A good student such as yourself doesn't belong here, right? Why yeah. That's right. You see, this wasn't my fault. This was all Toga Dash. Before Saito could finish, he felt the temperature in the room plummet. Soru's once friendly and happy demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Standing up, he walked around the table and leaned to the side. Standing in front of the room's lone hidden camera in the top corner. It seems you've forgotten, Saito-kun, Soru whispered with a small smile. Betraying your word to that man won't end well for you. Or your family. Or have you forgotten? Leaning back in his chair in terror, Saito stared into Soru's frigid brown eyes. Swallowing the lump in his throat, Saito shook his head. You're with him. Saito whispered. Nodding, Soru's cold expression immediately transformed. A large, easygoing smile spread across his face as his demeanor shifted into a more friendly tone. That's great. Soru said with a cheery tone. I'm glad we're on the same page now, My boy. Now then, let's talk about getting you out of here. Forcing a smile, Saito nodded and listened as Soru walked him through everything he'd done to get him released. The older, brown-haired man spoke about his talks with the judge and how Toga Himiko made a case for his release, shocking the young man. Thanks to the victim of the attack being willing to forgive his actions, the not-so-corrupt judge was willing to lessen Saito's punishment. Instead of finishing his sentence for his crimes, he would now be released on parole while performing community service. Usually, overturning a case like this would be unthinkable in a country like Japan. But thanks to the corrupt judge, the new ruling went unimpeded. Is this really happening? I can go home now. Saito muttered in a daze. Giving the boy a slight nod, Soru smiled and returned all his documents to his briefcase. Yes, this is really happening. We should be able to get you and young Sayaka out as well. Kids with bright futures like yourselves deserve a second chance. We should be able to get you released in another 2 weeks. So please be patient, Saito-kun. No way, Sayaka-chan as well. I can't believe it. Saito said with tears in his eyes. With his piece said, Soru stood up and went to the door. Saito turned to him and bowed his head in a burst of happiness. Thank you, Gakia-san. Truly. Pausing, Soru smiled slightly. Don't thank me. This was all thanks to him. Hearing the man's cold voice return, Saito's glee subsided slightly. He was again reminded that his freedom was only thanks to the man who ruined him. Right. Shimizu Sauta POV. Gah. Damn it. This guy's tough. A man dressed in a feathered cape with a jumpsuit with a large N on its chest said as he picked himself up after being punched. This was the pro hero native. But as a pro, I can't let these guys win. You hear that, bro? The big ol' hero thinks he's going to win. 2 men stood across from the pro hero, wearing amused smiles as they observed native wiping the blood from his injured lip. The man on the left had shiny, reflective skin with a metallic sheen and sharp, serrated teeth. On the right, another man with long, dirty blonde hair flexed his arms, causing his muscles to bulge and pulse. Whatever, let's just kick his ass so we can get out of here. The dirty blonde said as he and his partner approached the injured hero. Up above on the rooftops, I watched the rather lackluster battle between native and the 2 thugs unfold with a bored look as I chewed on some takoyaki. How boring, I said as I finished my last octopus ball. Sliding down my 4-eyed mask, I stood up and jumped away from the snooze fest of a fight. Let's go see if I can't find another fight. Leaping over the city rooftops, I scanned the streets and sights below with steady eyes. Landing on an empty bridge, I paused as I felt a disturbance in the air to my right. Focusing, I noticed a speeding blur of black flying right at me. Crack! With a hop, I flew back as a large, winged creature with an exposed brain crashed straight through the bridge, shattering and destroying the structure with ease and causing the nearby people below to panic at the sight of the creature. What is that thing? Someone call a hero. A monster. With a swing of its massive hands, the Nomu blew the dust cloud around it and turned to me as I landed on the road in front of it. Everyone ran around me, screaming as the large Nomu lumbered across from me. The Nomu stood around 2.5 meters tall and was heavily muscled. Its dark skin was marked by several prominent scars. On its back were wide, dragon-like wings, and its dinosaur-like feet cracked the pavement beneath its weight. It wore a pair of pants over its lower half. The creature's long fingers ended in sharp steel claws that dragged along the ground, leaving thin gouges in their wake. Its bird-like snout stretched out, filled with rows of sharp teeth as it let out a low growl. I don't recognize this one. No, wait. It sorta resembles the Nomu that fought All Might during the USJ incident. From underneath my mask, I looked around the surrounding rooftops and buildings. Despite my search, I failed to see any signs of Kurogiri or Shigaraki. Hey, ugly, I called out to the Nomu. Where's the one holding your leash? With a glass-shattering roar, the Nomu exploded toward me with incredible speed. The creature swiped one of its large arms at me and tried to slice my head to pieces. If it's like the one that fought against All Might during the USJ incident, then it should have a shock absorption quirk. Let's see how it handles against my slices. Dismantle. I swiped my hand down and watched as the Nomu's arm was sliced into several bloody parts. Ignoring the loss of its limb, the Nomu's head snapped toward me and bit its teeth at me. Weaving around its slobbering jaws, I swung my CE-enhanced fist and landed an uppercut into the bottom of its jaw with ratio. Grah! The Nomu groaned as its head snapped back violently before its body followed suit. Spinning in the air, the Nomu crash-landed on a parked car. That attack didn't do much damage. The most it did was send it flying back. What is that? A woman dressed in a business suit cried as she and several other nearby people freaked out at the sight of the monstrous bloody Nomu. You're a tough son of a bitch. I landed on a nearby traffic pole and watched as the Nomu's missing arm slowly regenerated. Rolling off the ruined car, the Nomu searched the street before its nose sniffed the air. Its head then jerked to my position with a roar. Healing, animal-like senses, strength, durability, flight, speed, and who knows what else. Stepping off the traffic pole, I grinned at the beast and rolled my neck. Good. This wouldn't be interesting if you weren't at least this strong. General Po. Walking down the busy sidewalk, 3 fashionably dressed girls strolled, their laughter ringing out like music amidst the urban noise. They wore high-waisted jeans with crop tops and oversized jackets. Did you see the latest episode? I can't believe what happened. One of the girls, Suzuki, gushed, her lengthy hair bouncing as she animatedly gestured with her hands. I know, right? From beside her, a second girl, Kajiwara, replied, flipping her sleek ponytail. That plot twist was everything. I'm still not over it. As they passed a trendy cafe, Utsushimi Kami, a member of the 3 girls, paused momentarily, taking a quick selfie with her friends in the background. This is going straight to my Insta feed, she declared, adjusting her sunglasses. The other 2 posed dramatically, playfully rolling their eyes but secretly loving the attention. Just as Kami was about to post her picture online, a loud explosion down the street stole their attention. Like a chemical reaction, everyone who was once walking without care began to panic and scream. Kami and her friends remained still due to the sudden ball of fire that erupted from a black monstrous creature punching a parked car. What is that? Kajiwara screeched as she grabbed onto Kami's arm. A monster. It's like, totally ugly, Kami said calmly. However, her legs shook as the winged creature released a roar and lifted the remaining pieces of the car. Its head seemed to scan the air and growled. With a throw, the monster threw both halves of the flaming vehicle toward Kami and her 2 friends, causing the 3 to scream in terror. That won't do. Kami watched with wide eyes as the flaming vehicle was sliced to pieces. Landing in front of 3, a black hooded figure wearing a mask aimed his right hand at the incoming beast. In an instant, several large cuts appeared over the Nomu's body, sending blood gushing onto the street. Turning to them, Sukyuna waved them off like they were pests. What are you wastes of space still doing here? Get out of my sight. Raising his hand, he then flicked his finger at them, causing a burst of strong wind to blow them back. This jolted the girls to snap out of their stupefied daze, and they began running away. As she ran, Kami turned back and watched as the masked man who saved her life effortlessly jumped around the monster's unrelenting attacks. Shimizu Sautapo. I've been fighting this thing for over 5 minutes now, and I haven't gotten a single point. How lame. Sliding under a wild haymaker, I grinned at the Nomu's crazed swings. Moving in, I placed my palm on its stomach and unleashed several cleave attacks. A spiderweb array of slices spread over the Nomu's torso as its blood splattered in front of me. Ignoring its injuries, the Nomu grabbed me by my shoulders with its large hands. Don't touch me. Schlick. The Nomu growled as its arms were ripped to ribbons. Landing on the ground, I leaped up and kicked it across its face with a loud crack. The genetically modified creature crashed through the wall of the bookstore to our left, sending bricks and debris everywhere. The people who were hiding within the bookstore all screamed and ran away once their eyes landed on the healing Nomu. Reaching down, the Nomu grabbed a large chunk of the broken wall and threw it at me. Moving to the side, I dodged the thrown wall and tilted my head back as its claws sliced through the air. Blurring right above it, I drove my fist into the side of its brain, sending it flying back. Despite the high level of strength I put behind my punch, the Nomu righted its body and planted its feet onto the ground. You're durable to physical blows, I muttered and swiped my fingers to the side. A long, deep slash ripped across the Nomu's body as it stumbled back. But against my slashes, that durability of yours is pretty weak. Seeing the Nomu blur away, I raised my hands up and caught its powerful right elbow strike. Due to the force, I flew back through the city street. Spinning midair, I landed on the pavement and used Dismantle to skate along the street. The Nomu growled as it chased after me. Seeing the abandoned vehicles around it, it began to chuck them at me effortlessly. Seeing the cars fly right at me, I gracefully slid in and out from their trajectories. At my current level, you're not much of a threat, I said as I jumped to the side as the Nomu slammed its left fist onto the ground, shattering the street and breaking the surrounding windows. Still, from everything I've seen, you're much more powerful than the Nomus Endeavor and All Might fought in the original timeline. I wonder how they would do against you. The Nomu before me growled in anger at the fact it continued to fail to land a blow on me. Turning to me, it opened its large maw, and a ball of blue energy began to form in front of it. That's new. Dashing to the side, I watched as a bright beam of energy shot through the building in front of me. The beam's loud screeching noise filled the air, causing all those still around us to cover their ears. The beam slowly began to fizzle out until steam flowed out of the Nomu's mouth. Not bad, I yelled as I moved in to strike the Nomu's chest with ratio. The creature groaned as its body snapped back from the critical blow. What else did they shove into you? The Nomu had no chance to reply as I punched and kicked its body down the street with ratio. The people who hadn't yet managed to escape all screamed and moved out of our way in order to not be crushed. Growing fed up, the Nomu tried to skewer me with its claws, but it watched dumbly as its claws were sliced off. Reaching up, I grabbed its bottom jaw and pulled my right arm back. Black flash. Wham! Combining the sparks of black with my ratio technique, the Nomu shot straight up into the sky with a resounding crack that shook the streets. Its spinning body crashed through a tall building that was in its path. Jumping after it, I turned to my right and swiped my arm to the side, unleashing a dismantle on a fast-approaching fireball the size of a small house. Sighing in irritation, I landed on a nearby rooftop and looked up, where a flying Endeavor glared down at me. Crap! The heroes are here. Standing all around me were several more heroes, most likely his sidekicks, with their quirks primed and ready to be used. I looked them over and found Burnin among them, a confident look on her masked face. Sukuna! Endeavor yelled out with a frown. I suggest you turn yourself in now while you have the chance. Even so, I was wondering when I would run into you. Number 2. I turned my head back up to the flaming man and shook my head. If it isn't the number 2 hero himself. Domestic abuse. Man. Tell me, hero, what are you going to do about that? Plus 25 SP, glaring at me in anger and confusion. Endeavor turned just in time as the Nomu flew right toward him with its claws aimed straight at his chest. Let's see how well you do. Number 2. General Po. Raising his flaming hands up out of instinct and several years of experience, Endeavor used a wall of fire to push back the incoming Nomu. His intense flames caused the beast to growl in anger as it was blocked from reaching its actual target. What is this creature? Endeavor said as he looked over the Nomu's monstrous body. The injuries left from his powerful flames were quickly healing. Are you working with Sukuna? Hearing its target's name, the Nomu blasted forward with a mighty flap of its wings. Seeing the creature moving toward him again, Endeavor propelled himself forward with his flames and charged his right arm with fire. Flash fire fist. Endeavor yelled and punched the Nomu across the face, causing a large burst of fire to explode over the bioengineered beast. Grinning, Endeavor pulled his arm back, but he quickly moved to the side as the Nomu burst through the roaring flames. Due to the heat, the Nomu's sharp metallic claws melted off its fingertips. Undeterred, the beast made a fist and swung a powerful punch into Endeavor's stomach. Moving quickly, Endeavor raised his arms and used a wave of fire to help absorb the punch's strength. Ugh! Endeavor grunted as the Nomu's fist launched him down the chaotic streets below. With a burst of fire, he slowed his descent and slid back along the road. Looking down, the number 2 hero watched as his arms shook. Even after dampening his punch, that thing still managed to hit me with this much power. I can't afford to be hit straight on. Crack. As the Nomu landed down the street, it glared at Endeavor. Its burns finally healed. In its mind, the Nomu reasoned that the man before it would try to stop it from reaching its true target. To accomplish its mission, the Nomu needed to swiftly eliminate the flaming man before moving on to its intended victim. A strong regenerative quirk and strength. By the looks of it, this thing seems to have several more abilities as well. Taking it in alive may not be an option. Endeavor thought, taking a calming breath. The Nomu roared and rushed him. In other words, I can't afford to hold back. Kamiji Mo, the pro-hero Burnin, watched Sukuna weave in and out of her fellow sidekick's attack with incredible ease. Strewn all over the rooftops were more than 20 of Endeavor's sidekicks. Their forms were battered and beaten, but fortunately, they were all still breathing. I can't believe it. He took them all down with such ease. Burnin thought with clenched teeth. Her original confidence was long gone. We don't stand a chance. Is this really the same guy who stepped in to save Fuyumi and Natsuo? Now, don't be so hasty. Sukuna mocked as he flipped over Onama's wide punch. With a flick, Sukuna sent Onama crashing harshly against the floor, knocking him out. Is that all you sidekicks got? How disappointing. A man wrapped in bandages and a purple flak jacket moved behind Sukuna without a word. Reaching into one of his flak jacket's many pockets, Kido pulled out several blue balls and threw them at Sukuna. The balls themselves were capture support items. Once they made an impact with their target, they would explode and release a thick, gooey material that would quickly solidify and restrict the movements of whoever was caught. Turning his head slightly, Sukuna swiped a finger to the side, and all 10 capture items were sliced apart, causing them to explode. What was that? Kido said as he was suddenly pushed forward into the raining goo by some invisible force. The force was a small green toad, Shikigami, with little white wings on its back. Seeing himself caught in his trap, Kido tried to remove the gooey material, but his body ended up trapped within its confines. Sukuna walked toward Kido with a raised arm but suddenly moved back to avoid a ball of green fire that blazed past him. Turning, the King of Curses saw Burnin reach up and remove another ball of flames from her flowing hair. Get away from him. Burnin yelled as she threw away her current doubts and fears and flew towards Sukuna using her quirk. Reaching up, she pulled out 2 long flaming swords from her hair and swiped at Sukuna. I'll stop you. How cute. You think you're a threat. Sukuna and Burnin moved in and out along the battered rooftop as she slashed and swiped at him with her flaming swords. With each swing, Burnin grew increasingly angry and helpless as she noticed that Sukuna's full attention wasn't even on her. No, his primary focus was on the ongoing battle between Endeavor and the Nomu down below. He's playing with me. Burnin thought in despair as she swiped her flaming sword at Sukuna's head, only for the man to weave under it with ease. How is he so strong? Burnin thought as she combined both swords into one large blade of fire. Thrusting forward, she watched as Sukuna swiped a finger across the air. Inexplicably, her large flame sword broke apart into useless embers. How? I grow tired of this, Sukuna said as he appeared in front of her. Burnin tried to jump back, but Sukuna grabbed her wrists and held her in place. I expected more out of Endeavor's sidekicks. But in the end, you're all so weak. You won't get away with everything you've done, villain. Burnin yelled as she tried to pull away from his grip but failed to do so due to his great strength. Once Endeavor defeats that thing, he'll come and stop you. I'm counting on that, Sukuna said as he finally let her go. Moving too fast for her to see, he struck her straight in the stomach. Now go to sleep. Falling forward onto the ground, Burnin watched as Sukuna walked over to the edge of the roof to watch the ongoing bursts and flashes of fire down below. Before her conscience left her, Mo glared at Sukuna one final time before she fell unconscious. General POV, TCH. How annoying. Mirko glared at the large shark man she had beaten in less than a minute being cuffed by 2 police officers. Off to the side, 3 broken cash registers sat on the side of the road as excited and curious bystanders watched the ongoing arrest. Good work, Mirko. Impressive as always. one of the officers said as she secretly fangirled over the rabbit-themed hero. Yeah. It was nothing. Mirko said as she threw her hair back. This guy couldn't even get my blood flowing. What a disappointment. She thought. Once the officers had everything under control, Mirko waved goodbye to some of the excited bystanders and leaped up onto the nearest rooftop. From there, she used her powerful legs and incredible jumping ability to continue her patrol through the city. What a bunch of weaklings. I need a good challenge. I haven't had a good fight ever since him. Mirko growled out as she came to a stop on a rooftop water tank. Damn, Sukuna. Just wait. I'll kick your ass, and I'll show you just which of us is the stronger fighter. Ever since her fight with the King of Curses, Mirko couldn't stop thinking and replaying their fight in her mind every day. There must have been a way to beat him that she didn't think of at the time. With that in mind, she pushed herself to train even harder than before. Mirko was fully confident that her newly grown strength would help her beat Sukuna in their rematch. That was her belief until the revelation she and everyone else on the task force heard regarding Sukuna. If the reports of him being the reason for the utter destruction that occurred in the Florum ward were to be believed, then her or anyone else's chances of defeating him were doubtful. Bah! I'll believe he's as strong as they say once I see it with my own eyes. Mirko said with a confident smile. Placing her hands on her hips, she eyed the streets below before her cell phone began to ring. Make it quick, Eraserhead. Mirko. Where are you? Eraserhead's voice was strained. Raising an eyebrow, she looked up at the starry night sky. I'm in Osaka. Why? Good. You're close by. Sukuna is in Wakayama. Endeavor is currently on the scene, but we need to move fast. How fast? I'm on my way. Mirko yelled and abruptly hung up. Flexing her thighs, she exploded off toward the direction Eraserhead said Sukuna was in with as much speed as she could muster. As she ran, a wide, excited smile grew over her face. Ha! Just you wait, Sukuna. I'll kick your ass. Shimizu Sauta POV, Hell Spider. I leaned to the side as several long tendrils of pure fire sliced across the streets below. The tendrils moved quickly and cut clean through some of the surrounding buildings. However, I noticed that Endeavor's attack had been focused and restrained to avoid causing too much collateral damage in his attempt to take out the Nomu. No wonder I pay so much in taxes. A lot of it goes into fixing the damage these heroes do. Then again, I did mess up a good chunk of the Florum ward. In the ruined city streets below, the massive, monstrous Nomu swiftly evaded Endeavor's attack. Charging forward, the Nomu tackled the number 2 hero, knocking him back. Endeavor grunted in pain as he was thrown across the street, his body crashing into a damaged vehicle. Despite his accumulated injuries from his long, drawn-out fight with the Nomu, Endeavor pushed himself back up and glared at the beast. He won't last much longer at this rate. I leaped through the air and landed on a different rooftop to get a better view of the fight. It doesn't help that he's holding back due to being so close to so many buildings and people. Scanning the environment, I saw several people who, for some reason, hadn't evacuated. They were all watching the violent fight with wide, excited eyes. Some were even recording it as well. Idiots. One slip up, and they could get killed getting caught in the crossfire. I muttered and debated whether I should help Endeavor out or not. Not yet. I want to see how far the Nomu can push this Endeavor. You damn beast. Endeavor said as he ignited his right arm with roaring flames. How is it you're that much stronger and faster than me? With a twist of his hips, Endeavor launched a blast of intense flames at the Nomu. Seeing the incoming attack, the Nomu opened its mouth and unleashed its own energy blast into the beam of flames. When both attacks met in the center, a bright flash of light illuminated the entire area. Squinting, I watched as both Endeavor and the Nomu tried to overpower each other. I won't let myself lose to you. Endeavor yelled as his feet began to slide back from the intense gusts of wind caused by their clashing attacks. Flash Fire Fist. With a loud yell, steam flew all around Endeavor as he increased the power of his attack. His beam of fire swelled and burst with high intensity as it quickly overpowered the Nomu's attack. In a flash of bright light, the Nomu's body was blasted back into a building. resulting in the building collapsing over its burnt remains. Panting in exhaustion, the flames around Endeavor slowly began to decrease in size until they were only small embers. Falling to a knee, steam and smoke rose around him as his battered body reached its limits. Not bad. I clapped my hands, gaining Endeavor's attention from down below. I looked down the hot, searing street where several scattered fires burned. You have some amazing control over your quirk. Still, you should have let everything you had loose. Plus 15 SP. What are you talking about? Exploding from underneath the large piles of rubble, a quickly healing Nomu rose to its full height. Bone, flesh, and skin regrew back as its newly regenerated wings flapped. Once its head was back in place, the Nomu threw its head back and released an ear-splitting roar. It can't be. Endeavor muttered in shock as the Nomu turned its attention to him. Nothing could have survived that attack. Landing in front of the spent hero, I slid my hands into my pocket and motioned to the bioengineered beast. That thing did. Raising my mask above my mouth, small tattoos appeared at the sides of my mouth. Don't move. Inumaki Toad's cursed technique, cursed speech, allows its user to reinforce their words using cursed energy at their opponent. Whatever the user says will compel their target to act or be acted upon based on those words spoken. A rather simple technique, but extremely powerful under the right user. However, like most cursed techniques, overusing cursed speech takes a physical toll on the user's body. The stronger the words used, the worse the side effects are. In the worst-case scenario, cursed speech could backfire on the user and result in sore throats, coughing up blood, and/or losing the ability to speak. But thanks to RCT, those drawbacks are reduced to a minor inconvenience. Another drawback of using cursed speech in a world lacking in CE is that I have to use double the amount of CE in order for the technique to work. However, thanks to my very large reserves, that issue has been rendered a minor hindrance. Immediately, the Nomu before me came to a complete stop. Its limbs were seemingly frozen as it remained rooted in place. From behind me, Endeavor's eyes grew wide as he also froze from hearing me speak. After healing my injured throat with RCT, I slid my mask back down and turned to Endeavor. Watch, Endeavor. I'll show you what true firepower looks like. Walking forward slightly, I stared at the Nomu and grinned. Open. Reaching out, I opened my palm and watched as a long stream of flames danced in front of me. Plus 50 SP, flames. Endeavor managed to whisper through his slightly open mouth. Holding my arms forward, I brought my hands together and concentrated on igniting my flames. As I spread my arms apart, a thick stream of fire began to dance between my palms. Then, bringing them back together swiftly, I grabbed one end of the flames with my right hand and pulled. This was fun, but I've grown bored of you, I said to the Nomu as I held my divine arrow beside me. Now, begone. Wish. Letting go, I watched my arrow strike true and detonate once it reached the Nomu. An immense blast of heat exploded from the Nomu as my attack caused a bright orange light to bathe the city in its glow. Once the light died down, the Nomu kneeled over. Its burning body slowly began to disintegrate into charred pieces of rock and dust. The only proof of the beast's existence was the large pile of burning black powder where it once stood. Turning to a shocked, unmoving Endeavor, I walked toward him and stood over him with my hands in my pockets. Plus 150 SP. Now then, what should I do with you? General P. Standing on an isolated rooftop a few kilometers away from where Sukuna and Endeavor were, a tall man dressed in a suit and wearing a black mechanical mask observed the King of Curses as he stood over Endeavor with a pleased grin. Excellent. You've exceeded my expectations, Sukuna. While the loss of the Nomu is regrettable, the information I gained from watching over you is invaluable. All for One said as his head turned to watch several incoming figures approaching Sukuna's position. Interesting. How will you handle this development? All for One turned to a young man with messy, grayish-blue hair of varying lengths. He wore black pants and a long-sleeved black shirt paired with red shoes. The most notable feature of the young man was a disembodied hand covering his face, obscuring most of his features except for his red eyes. Be sure to watch and learn. Tomura. This person may one day be a useful ally to your cause. Yes, Sensei. Shimizu Saotapui, get away from him. I watched as several strands of fiber wrapped around me. With a sudden pull, my body was lifted into the air, leaving me suspended. Quickly, dozens more strands began to encircle my limbs, effectively trapping me in place. Ho! What do we have here? I looked over to my right and watched as Best Jeanist held his hand up. In his grasp were dozens of fiber strands. Behind him, Edgeshot and Crust watched me closely and carefully. Sukuna. Best Jeanist said with a tone of finality. Your reign of evil stops tonight. Is that so? I muttered as I tried to escape. Or at least, I made a show of trying. These are some mighty strong fibers. It seems I've been caught. Plus 15 SP, rushing beside Endeavor. Ingenium came to a stop and checked over the number 2 hero. Endeavor. Are you okay? I'm fine. Growling in irritation, Endeavor felt control over his body return to him. With a grunt of exertion, he slowly stood up. He looked over to the rooftops and saw no sign of his sidekicks. What of my sidekicks? He said as he quickly turned to me, his eyes full of caution despite my apparent capture. Midnight is currently checking them over. Thankfully, it seems that they're all alive. Just knocked out. Ingenium said as he turned to me. So that's Sukuna. I didn't think it would have been this easy to capture him. Capture me? I said mockingly. Slowly, I began to laugh in amusement, gaining confused and suspicious looks from the heroes. Hearing my laugh, Endeavor gritted his teeth and forced his flames back on. How amusing. Do you think this is enough to stop me? In a split second, all the fibers holding me in place were ripped to shreds. Landing on the ground, I swiped my hand through the air and watched as an extended, shallow cut appeared over Best Jeanist's chest. The cut was not shallow due to Jeanist's durability. It was shallow due to the fact that I had held back on that attack. Shocking everyone but Endeavor. Plus 15 SP, plus 35 SP, plus 40 SP, plus 25 SP, plus 25 SP. Jeanist. Crust, Ingenium, and Edgeshot yelled in concern as they watched Best Jeanist stumble back and grab his bleeding wound. Come on, heroes. Show me what you can do, I said as I motioned them to attack me with a grin. Come at me. General POV, Kamehara Shinya, or Edgeshot, growled and shot toward Sukuna. Seeing his longtime friend, Best Jeanist, be so ruthlessly attacked had made him angry. It was only thanks to his many years as a pro hero that he was able to cool his head just enough not to act irrationally. Spiral Spear Hand. Flattening and twisting his body into a sharp string, Edgeshot burst straight at the waiting Sukuna with blinding speed. From behind his mask, Sukuna grinned and snapped his hand out, grabbing Edgeshot's thin form. He grabbed me. The hero screamed in his head as Sukuna used his body to block one of Ingenium's flying kicks. Ah. Sorry, Edgeshot. Ingenium yelled and hopped back, fearing he may force Sukuna to do something rash with Edgeshot within his grasp. I wonder, what would happen if I ripped you apart as you are now, Sukuna said as he stared at Edgeshot's thin form. Seeing something fast approaching, Sukuna released Edgeshot and dodged a large flying object. Hopping back, the King of Curses watched as Crust ran toward him with his arm cocked back. Upon release, the pro launched another chunk of his shield-based quirk at Sukuna. Swiping his finger to the side, Sukuna managed to easily rip apart Crust's attack. Recipro Burst. A blast of intense fire burst out of the engines from Ingenium's elbows, blasting him forward with incredible speed. Reaching Sukuna in a blink, the turbo hero threw out a powerful kick that would have pushed Sukuna back were it not for him spinning around Ingenium. Unfortunately, you don't seem to be able to change directions. Can you, Ingenium? Sukuna taunted as he watched Ingenium try to slow himself down to a stop down the battered street. Feeling a burst of heat from behind him, Sukuna turned and saw Endeavor launch a blast of flames at him. Unlike before, the man's flames were smaller and lacked the same intensity from his fight with the Nomu. Clapping his hands in front of him, Sukuna sent a dismantle toward the fire, splitting the blast into two separate waves of flames. As the flames flew past him, Sukuna saw several dozen thin fibers fly toward him in an effort to trap him. Sighing in annoyance, He released several slash attacks through the air that ripped apart Genist's threads. The hero ignored his bleeding chest as he swung his arms to the side to unleash several more strands onto Sukuna. At the next moment, Sukuna blurred away and reappeared on Genist's right side, shocking the man. Such speed. Best Genist thought as he tried to move away. You bore me, Sukuna muttered as he punched Best Genist on the side of his stomach, directly over his liver, with his technique, ratio. Best Genist's eyes grew wide as his body was launched across the street violently. Rolling to a stop, Best Genist's wide eyes stared up blankly into the night sky as he took slow, shallow breaths. Dude, are you getting all this? A spiky-haired blonde teenager said as he watched the ongoing fight down the ruined road. He was dressed in an orange and black hoodie as he hovered over his black-haired friend, who was wearing a high-collared blue shirt. Yeah, man. We're going viral. The young black-haired boy said as he held up his phone to record the battle. On his screen in the top right corner was a number showing off over 5 million viewers tuning in to watch the intense fight between several of Japan's top heroes and the mysterious masked man. Off behind them, a pink-haired girl shook as her shoulder-length hair continued producing cherry blossom petals due to her quirk. Guys, I think we need to get out of here before we freaking die. Nah, we'll be fine. Genist. Edgeshot yelled and ran right at Sukuna. Spreading his arms out, Edgeshot sent several kunai at Sukuna. Before they could reach him, the weapons were all torn to shreds. Glaring at the King of Curses, Edgeshot transformed his body into a thin strand and flew toward Sukuna's chest, hoping to pierce the masked man's lungs in order to incapacitate him. Sleep. Raising his mask slightly, Sukuna used cursed speech at Edgeshot. The ninja hero's small eyes grew wide before his long, thin body fell onto the ground in a heap of string. Quickly, Edgeshot fell into a peaceful slumber on the pavement. Sukuna, what a powerful foe, Crust muttered as he and Ingenium looked over at their unconscious comrades. Crust then looked over at Endeavor's form and noticed the man's normally large flames were now much smaller. Steam rose over the number 2's body as he glared at Sukuna. It seems that Endeavor is running on fumes. To think that Sukuna had pushed the number 2 hero so far. Crust thought. Suddenly, a large gust of pink gas gathered around Sukuna. Looking down, Sukuna tilted his head as the gas quickly rose up until he finally took a breath. Nighty-night, King of Curses. This is it for you. The R-rated hero, Midnight, said in a sultry voice as she held her costume's thin, torn-off fabric in her hand, exposing a large part of her shoulder and arm as she walked out from behind a building corner. At the sight of Sukuna's still standing body, Midnight froze as the masked man began to chuckle. It can't be. Midnight thought. Midnight. You're here too. Sukuna said as he swiped his arm through the air, sending her quirk sleeping gas away from him with a mighty gust of wind. Unfortunately for you, your quirk is useless against me. You gotta be kidding me. Midnight hissed as Sukuna rushed toward her. Before the demon god could reach her, Ingenium dashed toward him and sent a wide kick at his head. Raising his arm, Sukuna blocked the strong kick and grabbed onto the hero's leg. Chuckling, Sukuna used a weak cleave on Ingenium's leg, slicing Ingenium's Achilles heel. Gah! Ingenium screamed as Sukuna spun and kicked the turbo hero through a window. Sukuna! Crust yelled as he rushed Sukuna with a large shield raised in front of him. With as much power as he could muster, Crust bashed into Sukuna's side and sent the King of Curses sliding back. Seeing his attack having an effect, he rushed in again to bash his shield one more time. Let's see how that shield of yours works against this. Piercing ox. Sukuna said as he moved to the right. Blinking in confusion, Crust heard several loud thuds rippling through the street. Unseen by him and those around him, a large black ox dashed through the street and bashed the top of its head into Crust's shield, shattering the man's defense and slamming its head right into Crust's stomach. Gah! Crust yelled in pain as his consciousness left him. Off to the sides, Midnight and Endeavor watched on with confusion as Crust was attacked by a seemingly invisible force. It's like Mirko said. Midnight said with growing concern. One by one, every member of the task force was being taken out with seemingly relative ease by Sukuna. Damn it. Where are you, Eraser, Mirko? Piercing Ox continued running with Crust's unconscious body over its head until it dug its legs into the road, causing Crust to fly through a brick wall from the abrupt loss of momentum. How long am I going to stand here? Endeavor growled as he watched Crust be buried under the wall's debris. Taking a step forward, Endeavor clenched his teeth and ignored his overheating body in favor of dashing at Sukuna. With a roar of defiance, he summoned his flames back over his body and flew at Sukuna. Turning to the flaming man, Sukuna chuckled. Switch. Endeavor was confused by the word, but he had little time to think as a large wave of water rose out of thin air and impacted him with incredible force. Shimizu Sautapu. Due to Endeavor's already overheated body, the crashing wave attack from Disaster Tides left him utterly helpless as the water extinguished any remaining embers around him. While he could still rely on his pure physical strength and speed to attack me, his struggle to lift himself from the wet floor made me doubt he would be much of a threat. Plus 65 SP. Plus 55 SP. This isn't good. Midnight muttered as she held her whip at her side. Turning away from Endeavor, her eyes grew wide when she found no sight of me. Where did he dash? Right here. Plus 35 SP. Before she could react, I grabbed the top of her head and knocked her out with a careful application of CE. Like a puppet with its strings cut off, the R-rated hero collapsed onto the ground. Water as well. Endeavor coughed as he raised his head to glare at me. Just how many quirks do you have? As I walked toward him, I began to chuckle. Would knowing the answer make your loss any more bearable? Stopping in front of him, I debated if I should switch out 2 more techniques for Disaster Flames and Ice Formation. I wondered what type of expression he'd make at seeing what he spent most of his life trying to achieve be done so effortlessly before his eyes. In the end, I chose against that. As funny as that would have been to see, I couldn't risk leaving myself with limited techniques in case more pro heroes arrived. This was fun. Number 2. Next time, let's have a real fight. Before I decided to knock him out, I paused. Oh, that's right. How are those 2 children of yours? The pretty girl and the angry little boy. Plus 75 SP. So that was you. Endeavor hissed as his body began to slowly heat up. In the end, he failed to produce his precious hellfire. Seeing his quirk fail him, Endeavor ended up choosing to just glare at me. Why? Why help them? What benefit is there for you to have saved them? Were you hoping I'd be in your debt? I saved them on a whim, I muttered as I looked out at all the battered and destroyed streets. The utter destruction from tonight's battles had left deep scars on the surrounding buildings and roads. Especially the areas around where I had destroyed the Nomu with my divine arrow. Nothing more than that. Are you connected to that man? Endeavor said carefully, hoping to acquire as much intelligence on me as possible despite his situation. Ah, you mean all for one, I said as I turned to him. I could have told him that I had no affiliation with the quirk-stealing man, but I decided not to. It was better to keep the heroes and everyone else who was privy to me guessing who exactly Sukuna was. That way, they'd stay off my trail for as long as possible. Wouldn't you like to know? Appearing beside him, I bashed my fist into the side of his head. The number 2 hero rolled on the ground from the force of my punch and remained still at my knockout punch. Plus 90 SP. I should fight pro heroes more often. They give out a lot of SP. At the sight of all the beaten and unconscious heroes, all the people who decided to hang back to watch or record the fight foolishly walked out from their hiding spots with disbelief on their faces. It was as if they couldn't fathom the fact that their precious heroes had actually lost. Standing still, I chose to remain in my spot over Endeavor's fallen form, holding my head high for them to see, indeed, for the world to see. To be cheeky, I even gave them a bow as a way of thanking them for being such a wonderful audience. And with this, I announce myself to the world. No way, the heroes lost. Who is that guy? So strong. Even the number 2 lost. The heroes called him Sukuna, right? Standing straight, I decided it was time to get the hell out of here before All Might showed up. No matter how much stronger I've gotten, I had no illusions that I would be able to beat the man. At least, not until I had the 6 eyes so I could use the Limitless without worry of draining all my CE. Where do you think you're going, Sukuna? Whoosh. Raising my arms, I blocked a rather powerful blow that sent me skidding back. Looking at my attacker, I grinned at the sight of the rabbit hero, MHA. She was covered in a thin sheen of sweat as her chest rose and fell quickly as she breathed heavily. Her red eyes stared into me with, "Hunger? What's that about?" She must really be upset that I knocked her out last time. MHA then blinked and looked around at the scattered pro heroes. At the sight of so many fallen pros, she calmed herself and leaned low. Plus 45 SP. I hope you had a nice warm-up with these chumps because I don't want to hear any excuses after I kick your ass. MHA yelled with ferocity as she all but exploded toward me. Ha! This night just keeps getting better, I said as I rushed in to meet her head-on. Don't disappoint me again, little rabbit. General Po, watching with wide, unbelieving eyes, Midoriya Izuku stared at his phone as he watched the number 2 hero be beaten down into unconsciousness by a mask-wearing man. Shinso Hitoshi's expression was tight and tense beside him as the sweat from their late-night jog through the city dripped down his face. What the hell is going on? Hitoshi muttered as he watched the King of Curses bow and rise with his hands outstretched beside him. Who is this guy? The comments are calling him Sukuna, Izuku said as he and Hitoshi watched several comments from the livestream scroll by. The King of Curses. Sitting within an old, abandoned apartment building on the outskirts of Chiba. A tall, black-haired young man watched the ongoing fight between Sukuna and several pro heroes on a laptop. His deep blue eyes watched with growing amusement as Sukuna launched a massive wave of water onto Endeavor. A large, crazed smile grew over the young man's gnarled, wrinkled, purple skin. Suddenly, a low chuckle escaped his mouth as he quickly burst into laughter once Sukuna punched Endeavor across the street. So that's him. That's Sukuna, the King of Curses. The young man, Darby, said in delight as he leaned back into an old, dirty couch. To think he'd handle Endeavor like a child for everyone to see. How wonderful. Standing up, Darby walked over to the broken, boarded-up window to stare at the far-off city buildings. With you, I'm sure I can accomplish all of my goals, Darby said in a low tone as his eyes took on a dark sheen. Just you wait, Endeavor. I'll soon burn everything you've ever touched until there's nothing left. From behind the safety and privacy of the Might Gate, situated at the top of Might Tower, Toshinori Yagi clutched his injured side as he witnessed Endeavor being knocked out by a powerful strike. He turned toward the gate, gritting his teeth in frustration as he attempted to transform into his powerful All Might form. However, he was hindered by several loud, bloody coughs. Damn it! If only I hadn't used up all my time. Yagi said, narrowing his eyes as he turned back to the livestream on his large television screen. Seeing Sukuna showboating, Yagi couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that the man hadn't killed any of the heroes who tried to take him down. So that's him. Sukuna. There's no doubt about it. You're just like that man. Come on, Eri-chan. It's time for bed. Walking into the living room, Kaina smiled at the young girl as she watched the television with wide, curious eyes. Turning to the woman, Eri smiled at the ongoing news channel. Look, Onichan. It's Sauteronia-san. Eri said. Tilting her head in confusion, Kaina looked up at the news channel reporting an ongoing battle between several heroes and a lone villain in Wakayama. A panicked reporter was giving a quick recount of what had happened so far, from when Sukuna was trapped by Best Jeanist all the way to him knocking out or taking each of the heroes out of the fight with almost unbelievable ease. Oh no. HM. Walking into the room, a tired Jin turned to the television and quickly realized what was happening. Sliding off his gaming headset from his ears, Jin's wide eyes turned to Kaina. Holy shit. Sauter is on the news. Sitting in his chair in a large open office on the highest floor of the Detnerak Company building, Yotsubashi Rikia hummed in amusement as he watched Sukuna effortlessly knock out each hero who tried to take him down. The rich and powerful CEO chuckled at the sight of Sukuna's bow to the audience before looking over at a man with long black hair hiding his eyes under thick bangs. Tell me, skeptic, what are your thoughts on the man they call Sukuna? Rikia said with a small smile. Chikazoku Tomoyasu, otherwise known as Skeptic, frowned as he quickly typed on his laptop from his seat. Sukuna has been a rather large thorn in the HPSC's and hero sides. From the files and photos they've tried to hide, Sukuna was the one truly responsible for the destruction of the Shaiha Saikai and a large portion of the Florum Ward. The man is extremely powerful and feared. How marvelous, Rikia said before turning back to his monitor screen. He'll make a wonderful addition to the Meta Liberation Army. Wouldn't you say? With him on our side, I can finally see Destro's vision come to life. Hey, Keiko-chan? Where are you? Himiko said as she walked down the stairs of Hayes Keiko's family home. Walking into the living room, Himiko found her friend standing, shocked, still in front of the television beside her parents. Stepping up beside Keiko, Himiko watched on as a news broadcast showed off video clips of Sukuna fighting off several of Japan's famous heroes. Sukuna-kun. Himiko whispered in surprise as the clip of Sukuna punching Endeavor onto the ground played. I've never seen anything like this, Keiko said, seemingly not hearing Himiko's familiar suffix. For a single villain to defeat so many pros. I can't believe my eyes. How scary. Keiko's mother, Yoshiyuki Hana, said with worried eyes as the defeated forms of the pro heroes flashed on the screen. They're all alive, right? I think so. Yoshiyuki Kent, Keiko's father, said as he held his hands tightly. Yeah. I'm sure those heroes are just fine. Blinking in bewilderment, Himiko slipped off her facial mask and stared at Sukuna as he bowed to the camera. I thought you were going to stay under the radar, Sukuna-kun. Himiko thought as she felt her phone buzz. Lifting it, she saw a text from Kaina. Kaina Onichan, what the hell is going on? All throughout Japan, thousands upon thousands of people tuned into the live stream or dozens of news channels covering the ongoing fight with Sukuna and several of Japan's pro heroes. There were even growing viewers from outside the country as well, several of whom were intrigued foreign pro heroes and villains who watched with careful eyes as Sukuna made his first ever appearance on the national stage. Closing the metal door behind him, a tall, brown-haired man walked across the rooftop of a high-rise building. Reaching the edge, he slipped off his black backpack and brought out a pair of military-grade binoculars. Zooming in, the brown-haired man focused his sights on Sukuna as he punched Endeavor away from his position. The King of Curses was approximately 25 kilometers away. The man then raised an eyebrow at the sudden appearance of the rabbit-themed hero, Mirko. Placing his binoculars away, the man, Gunther, raised a cell phone up to his ear. I have Sukuna in my sights. But there seems to be a straggler. What should I do about her? The situation has already escalated far beyond my expectations. Mirko is a small price to pay for Sukuna's death. If you have a shot, take it. No matter who gets in your way. The HPSC chairman said from the other line. Finish this. Tonight. Understood. Gunther man said as the chairman hung up. Stepping back, he removed his black jacket, leaving him shirtless. For the past decade, Gunther, a man born in Germany, had been working as one of the world's most elite assassins. Gunther has built quite a legend for himself, with a 99% success rate in eliminating his assigned targets. Thanks to his reputation and powerful quirk, he only accepted jobs with the highest payouts. So when the chairman of Japan's HPSC offered him one of the most lucrative contracts he had ever received, Gunther didn't hesitate to take out the man known as Sukuna. Taking a deep breath, Gunther's torso began to twist and shift as steel, cables, and machinery grew out of his flesh. The man grunted in pain as the machinery continued to grow and change until it formed a large rail gun. Snapping out from under the barrel, a bipod planted itself on the ground. Sighing, Gunther reached out to the railgun controls and began charging his quirk's power. Gunther's quirk, Railgun, allowed him to sprout a large mechanical railgun from his chest. However, doing this causes Gunther significant levels of intense pain. Once charged, the railgun can fire a powerful 5-meter radius blast that can obliterate anything in its 50-kilometer range into ashes. Charging. Gunther said as he placed his binoculars onto a helmet. Placing the helmet on his head, he focused his sights on Sukuna's form. 15%. 18%. 21%. 26%. Shimizu Sautopui. With a twist of her hips, Mirko launched a powerful kick onto my raised forearm. Using CE reinforcement, I grinned behind my mask as I swiped her foot away. What's up with that mask you're wearing? Don't tell me you're getting shy. Miyako yelled as she slid back. Rushing in again, she unleashed several kicks at me. And where's that fancy stick of yours? Don't tell me it broke. Parrying and weaving around her attacks, I flicked out a punch she barely managed to block at the last second with her arms. Grimacing at the punch, Miyako grabbed my forearm and used it as leverage to try and kick the side of my head with an elegant spin. I figured I'd give you a handicap. Ain't that considerate of me? I said mockingly as I leaned back, avoiding the kick. Plus 35 SP, bastard, Miyako said with a wide grin as she flipped back. Leaping high, she pulled her leg up and flexed her leg muscles. Lunar arc. With an upwards kick of my own, I met her attack head-on using ratio. Due to the impact of our attacks, the ground beneath me rippled and shattered. Murkoa's eyes grew wide at the sight of her attack being pushed back. That's it. She's definitely on another level from these bozos. Flexing my legs, I jumped up to her. Miyako was momentarily surprised that I had closed the distance between us until our faces were only a few centimeters away. Excellent. Show me all of your ultimate moves, Miyako. Let's dance. Plus 100 SP, at my statement, Murkoa's eyes grew wide as a dark blush grew on her face. Immediately, a wide, maniacal smile grew over her face. Ha! I'll make you regret saying that. Miyako yelled as we entered a speeding battle up and down the street. As we fought, we exchanged powerful kicks and punches, each of us trying to outmaneuver the other. I was aware that if I increased my CE reinforcement, I could easily surpass her in both strength and speed. However, that wouldn't be any fun. Unlike the heroes around us, Miyako relied on her hard-earned strength and skills, battling with just her bare arms and legs. I respected that, as I also spent hours training and practicing each day. Lunar Tijeras. Miyako screamed as she quickly pressed her thighs against the sides of my head. Should I get out of this or not? Before the rabbit-themed hero could spin to slam my head into the pavement, I slid my hands over the insides of her thighs and pushed. Murko's eyes grew wide in disbelief as I overpowered her leg strength in seconds. Plus 55 SP, with her legs spread out before me, I drove my fist right into her face. As her head snapped back, I twisted my hips and swung my left arm. Black flash. Plus 65 SP. Miyako gasped in pain as she was flung back across the street in a wild heap from my punch striking her left thigh. As she rolled, I appeared behind her and landed a kick on the side of her torso. Crashing into the ground, Miyako blearily looked up to me before a challenging and hungry, blooded grin spread over her face. Standing up, she glared at me as she swiped the blood dripping down her face with her forearm. That, all you got? How pathetic. Miyako muttered as she shook her head to stop her vision from spinning. Looking down, she saw a nasty bruise over her shaking injured left thigh. If you think this is enough to stop me, then you're really stupid. How cheeky. Ignoring her pain and injuries, Miyako dashed toward me and sent a forward kick onto my stomach. Bracing myself, I tanked her kick and landed a left hook onto her face. Spitting out a glob of blood, she grabbed my arm and held it tightly against her side. Twisting, she flipped her body to the right. Wham! Raising my right arm, I blocked her kick and countered with my own flying knee. From there, we continued to exchange quick punches and kicks at one another from within our close distance in a dance of violence. Despite all her attempts, Murkoa's attacks could barely manage to get through my reinforcement. Unfortunately for her, that meant her own body was accumulating much more damage than she could throw out. Seeing that she was on the losing end of our exchange, she released my arm and jumped back with a wince. Looking down, Miyako saw her bruised and bloody limbs begin to shake in exhaustion and pain. Plus 35 SP. Am I seriously going to lose again? Miyako growled out before glaring at me. To hell with that. I'm winning this. Before she could rush me once again, a bright light flashed out from behind her, transforming the once dark night sky into a bright white. I looked behind her and saw a massive beam of energy slicing through the air across the city toward her and me. Anything that got in the beam's way was obliterated into nothing. The buildings, towers, and water tanks were all swiftly destroyed and erased. Due to the beam's radiating energy, all technology within 3 kilometers began to short out and shut off. This immediately caused all surrounding phones and cameras to stop recording the ongoing battle. Due to her instincts, Mirko stopped moving and turned around to see the 5-meter-wide beam flying right at her. At its current speed, the flying beam of death would reach her before she had the time to react. How rude. Interrupting our dance like that. Switch. Blurring in front of her, I grabbed the very air in front of me as if it were a piece of cloth and pulled up. Yuro Takako's cursed technique, sky manipulation, is the ability to turn the sky into a tangible surface. Sky manipulation can warp and distort the very air itself, granting its user the ability to seemingly warp the world around them in any way they see fit. The user can also strike the very air itself, and if used in front of an opponent, it can break the sky around an opponent to bypass any defense they have. However, in this case, I manipulated the very air in front of me to change the incoming beam's trajectory toward the sky above. The massive beam of energy instantly changed its course as the very sky around it twisted upwards, sending it flying straight up into the sky itself. All those around the area and in the far-off city watched in awe as a large beam of light stretched into the heavens before it slowly began to fizzle away. Plus 155 SP, W-Watt. Mirko muttered in shock as she stared up at the slowly darkening sky. "We'll have to pick up our dance another time, little rabbit," I said, turning to her. "I have a bug to crush." Without another word, I vanished in a burst of speed. General POV. What the hell? Gunther muttered in German as he watched his beam somehow be redirected into the sky. Impossible. Blinking, he quickly used his binoculars to look down onto the street, only to find a confused Mirko looking around. Where did Sukuna go? What an impressive quirk. A wave of goosebumps spread across Gunther's body as he heard a low voice speak from behind him. Due to the railgun sticking out of his chest, he was only able to spin his neck around to find Sukuna standing behind him with his hands in his pockets. "From your accent, you're not from around here." Which begs the question, what is a foreigner with such an impressive quirk doing in my country? How did you? Gunther felt his tongue swell within his throat as a wave of terror flowed through him. Not in all his years as a professional assassin had he felt such a heavy aura of power from a single man. Without warning, 2 deep gouges sliced through the ground beside him from an imperceptible force, causing the German man to freeze in his spot. "I'll give you one chance to prolong your sorry existence," Sukuna said as he pointed a finger at Gunther. "Tell me who sent you." General POV. A giant villain. Izuku said as he and Keiko watched from the safety of the police blockade alongside several other people. Standing tall on the train tracks at the Tatwan train station, a massive man with a beastly appearance, possessing a head resembling that of a horse or a shark and a very wide-set, muscular body, growled as he ran amok. The giant villain had long, dark brown hair, which he wore in dreadlocks, and a reddish-brown beard around his jaw. He wears a tattered black shirt, the sleeves ripped off and the front ripped open, and a pair of blue jeans. "Go away." The giant villain roared as he looked up to see a man wearing a tight dark blue bodysuit and wooden-like armor on his limbs. Over his head was a thick, wooden helmet that hid his features. This was the new pro hero, Kamu Woods. With a wide swing, the large man slammed his arm across the train tracks, sending a steel beam onto the ground. Rushing from under the bridge, another hero with a prominent square chin and a large headband with a yellow and black striped caution pattern, matching his thick wrist guards and the belt around his waist, raised his arms to catch the falling beam. This was the pro hero, Death Arms. "Oh, Backdraft is here too," Keiko said with a smile as she and Izuku watched as a long water barricade came to life before the curious large crowd. Off a few feet to their right, the pro hero Backdraft told the rowdy crowd to stay behind his water barricade. Landing on the station's overhead roof, Kamu Woods glared at the villain, destroying everything around him. "You used your skills for illegal purposes when people are going to work, and you have committed a theft resulting in injury. You're really evil incarnate. Go, Kamu Woods," Keiko said with excitement, turning to her friend. She saw the deep thoughtfulness behind his eyes. "Izuku-kun? Everything okay?" "Ah, yeah. I guess I'm still thinking about what happened 2 weeks ago." Izuku said as he watched Kamu Woods and the large villain fight. I still can't believe that they all lost. Not to mention that the villain, Sukuna, got away in the end. Oh, that. Keiko whispered as she looked over the expressions of the crowd. Since the battle between Sukuna and several of Japan's top pro heroes, including the number 2 hero, Japan's society had begun to doubt the ability and strength of the heroes they once admired and adored. Witnessing not just 1 or 2 but 7 of the greatest heroes in the country lose to a single man was devastating. The situation worsened when it was later revealed that many of Endeavor's sidekicks had also been defeated by that same individual that night. It was disheartening to see notable heroes like Endeavor, Best Jeanist, Edgeshot, and even Mirko all fall in what seemed to be a one-sided battle. If such a thing could happen to some of Japan's best, then what hope would there be for the people of Japan to have in the rest of their heroes in any future conflict? Younger generations believed that everything would have gone well if All Might had been present. In contrast, older generations seemed to come upon a profound truth about their society due to this incident: their over-reliance on one individual, All Might. If things could only turn out well if the number 1 hero was around, what hope would there be once the man finally retired or somehow perished one day? Would incidents like the night that Sukuna defeated several pro heroes continue to happen? Some members of the older generations in the crowd watching Kamu Woods battle the giant villain wore worried and grave expressions. Even though they didn't want to consider it, the possibility of the heroes losing seemed very real, a stark contrast to their previous belief that the heroes would always triumph. One consequence of witnessing all 7 heroes being defeated in such a manner was the increase in criminal activity throughout Japan within just 2 weeks. Villains and criminals were emboldened by Sukuna's actions. If one man could defeat so many pros on their own, why couldn't they? These thoughts belonged to those foolish and egotistical enough to attempt to imitate the King of Curses. This arrogance ultimately led to their swift defeat by the very heroes they believed they could overcome. The individuals from the underworld who were already familiar with Sukuna's notorious reputation became even more fearful of him. Another result of the King of Curses' actions was that many individuals began to form groups to pledge their loyalty to their new unofficial leader. After all, when such a powerful and infamous figure as Sukuna gains widespread recognition, it's only natural for other inspiring individuals to rally in his wake. In summary, the night of the battle between Sukuna and all 7 heroes shook Japan's heroic society to its core. "It's okay, Izuku-kun," Keiko said with a bright grin. She grabbed his right, scarred hand in her own and squeezed. "I'm sure once All Might finds Sukuna, he'll beat him in the blink of an eye. He is the strongest, after all." Seeing his friend's bright and warm personality, Izuku couldn't help but smile. "Yeah, you're right. Canon." At that moment, a massive and curvaceous creamy blonde-haired woman in a skin-tight purple and tan costume burst out of nowhere and kicked the giant villain in the head, launching him off the train tracks. Off beside her, a frozen, stunned Kamu Woods remained where he stood as his ultimate attack was interrupted. Landing on the ground with a loud crash, the large woman leaned forward to show off her ample ass to the crowd beneath with a playful look as she hovered over the unconscious villain. Piece of cake for the world's next hottest hero. "Hi there, everyone. I'm Mount Lady. Now you don't have to worry about this bum anymore," Mount Lady said as she winked at the crowd. "It's Mount Lady. Take pictures. Pictures. Look at her costume. Nothing left to the imagination. Please step on me." Keiko sighed at the now livelier crowd reactions as a wave of men and even some women brought out their phones and cameras to take shots of the newly debuted hero, Mount Lady. "Hey, Izuku-kun. We should hurry and get to school." Turning to her friend, she saw him writing quick notes in his notebook. As she watched him mutter to himself, Keiko smiled warmly as Izuku returned to his hero otaku self. Grabbing the collar of his school uniform, Keiko began guiding Izuku through the crowds. "Come on. Let's get to school." Shimizu Sauta POV, Chef's Choice. Chef's Choice. Plus 15 SP. Haha. That's what I like about you, Shimizu-kun. Lunch Rush cheered as he walked back to whip me up a new delicious dish. Once he was done, I was presented with an exquisite plate of seafood paella. After thanking the man, nay, the artist, I paid for my lunch and sat down at my usual table surrounded by Himiko, Hikari, Toshio, Juru, and Mitsuko. Lunch is my favorite period, I said as I dug into my food with a hum. You attend one of the most prestigious schools in Japan, and your favorite period is lunch. Toshio said with a deadpan expression. Saota-kun may be onto something. Lunch rush is on another level. Mitsuko said with a grin as she enjoyed her bowl of udon. From beside me, Himiko giggled and grabbed a shrimp off my plate. I turned to her in betrayal as she quickly placed the shrimp into her mouth before I could steal it back. Hee hee. Sorry, Saota-kun. But if it's any consolation, the shrimp was very delicious. My shrimp? How dare you? Ignoring Himiko's betrayal, I refocused on eating my lunch. As I ate, my mind traveled back to the discovery I made a week ago. 2 weeks ago. An assassin. Kaina said slowly, her face serious and calculating. Knowing the chairman, he was probably getting a lot of pressure over my failed mission. But to think he would go so far as to hire assassins outside of Japan. From the looks of it, the assassin was willing to kill anyone in the crossfire as long as they managed to get a shot on me, I said as I leaned on one of the wooden beams of my patio. If I hadn't redirected the blast, Mirko and everyone else within the buildings that were in the blast's trajectory would have been killed. That's concerning, Jin said as he rubbed his chin in thought. That means that the gloves are off when it comes to you. Did that guy, Gunther, was it? Tell you how many more assassins are coming after you? Before I killed him, he told me he believes there is a possibility that at least 6 other assassins are traversing the country in search of me, hoping to kill me. While he wasn't certain about the exact number, based on what the chairman told him, the contract on my life is an open one. If they are anything like Gunther, then these assassins will possess powerful quirks. I glanced down at my dinged-up mask and set it on a nearby table. I'll need to stay alert whenever I go out. Kaina nodded and crossed her arms under her chest. It was only because of my extensive experience in tracking some of the most elusive targets in Japan that I was able to locate you the first time. If these assassins are as skilled as I believe, they will most likely find you soon. Plus 15 SP, not to mention the fact that you are now super famous. Jin said with wide eyes. What were you thinking, bro? Now everyone knows about Sukuna. You're practically the country's #1 enemy right now. Easy, Jin-kun, Kaina said softly as she placed a hand on his shoulder, calming the anxious man. Seeing this caused me to raise an eyebrow. But he's right, Saota-san. You went ahead and made a show of beating down several of Japan's pillars. Like it or not, you're now on everyone's hit list. Everyone, and I mean everyone, will be gunning for you. Yeah, I know, I said with a sigh. Everything just got away from me at that moment. 1 minute, I was enjoying some takoyaki, and the next, I found myself fighting a bioengineered Nomu. From there, things just kept spiraling out of control. Plus 10 SP, walking up to me, Kaina placed her hands on my shoulders. At this point, what's done is done. The only thing I can recommend for you to do is to have Sukuna lay low. At least for now. Present. Lay low, he. Shimizu-san. Stepping in front of our lunch table, a tall male student with grey hair and electric pink eyes spoke to me with a calm expression. The nearby tables full of students all looked at the grey-haired student with wonder. Which wasn't surprising. This was this year's most handsome and intelligent student, Taijima Yu. Taijima Yu was also said to have this year's most promising quirk. That quirk is called Body Shift. Body Shift allows you to transform any 2 body parts into whatever he can imagine. Whether that be massive flaming swords or large buster rifles that can obliterate almost anything. He can also create hover boots on his legs or a jetpack on his back that lets him fly around. Despite having a powerful and diverse quirk, he was placed in the general education course. This was because he had the flu during the entrance exam, which prevented him from participating in the practical hero course examination. Regardless of his unfortunate circumstances in being placed in the general education course, he was one of the most promising students among all of the first-year students. When the sports festival arrived, no one doubted that you would be transferred to the hero course, replacing one of the reinstated students of Class 1A. Due to all this, the guy was revered by all our peers as the first year's golden prince. Guys wanted to be his friend, and the girls wanted to be with him. Oh, this Eichmann bastard also happened to be in my class as well. Himiko tilted her head in confusion as Hikari kept looking back and forth between me and you. Mitsuko, Juru, and Toshio watched on in curiosity as our classroom's shining prince stared at me intently. Such an intense stare. Is Taijima going to confess? Mitsuko whispered as she whipped out a yaoi manga from her bag. How exciting! Off in the back at the so-called popular table, several students, alongside Muraka Kohaku, all watched on with gaping expressions as their friend interacted with the oddballs losers of the class. What does this handsome bastard want with me? Shimizu-san, you repeated himself. Please spar with me after school. Say what? I apologize. I didn't intend for there to be an audience. You said as we turned to a rather big crowd standing off to the side of the extensive training room you had booked. +5 SP, Himiko and our odd little group stood beside the crowd composed of the popular kids and some other first-year Gen Ed students. Noticing my stare, Himiko waved with a small smile while the rest of our group cheered me on. Off beside us, Cementos stood watching over us with a patient expression as our overseer. Go, Shimizu-san. Kick that pretty boy's ass. Toshio yelled with an indignant expression as Kohaku glared at him. As if Taijima-kun would lose. Kohaku huffed as she flipped her orange hair back. Her eyes then glanced over to me quickly with a conflicted light. It's whatever. I shrugged and adjusted my gym uniform. Looking around the training mat below us, I eyed you with a bored look. So, what's this about again? +5 SP, of course. You nodded and began to stretch. Throughout our limited practical combat classes, you and I have yet to be assigned to the same group. However, I've kept a close eye on you throughout your own matches. Despite your quirkless status, you've somehow been able to win your matches through sheer skill, strength, and speed alone. For this to be possible, you must hold mastery over several martial arts despite your young age. I want to see how my own physical skills compare to your own. I see, I said, getting the gist of what is getting at. What do you gain out of this? If you use your quirk, I doubt I could keep up for long. There's no real benefit from fighting a quirkless person. Shaking his head, you stared into my eyes with a calm, calculating look. No, I do stand at attaining something from a pure hand-to-hand fight with you. That is getting one step closer to my goal of attaining true strength. Slowly, he slid his body into a perfect Aikido stance. Please allow me to see where my skills stand up to yours, Shimizu-san. He's not like how I expected. I guess I have to rethink my biases. I guess that's fine. I got some free time. I nodded and slid into my own Wing Chun stance. Show me what you've got. +5 SP, hearing my agreement, you smiled slightly and began to close the distance between us. Seeing us both ready, Cementos stepped forward and held a hand up before bringing it down. Begin. You darted forward, light on his feet, feinting with a quick jab before twisting into a roundhouse kick. With little effort, I stepped back, the air whooshing as the kick passed inches from my face. Without pause, I countered with a thunderous straight punch, aiming for Yu's chest. Yu twisted his body, deflecting the blow with a forearm block, but the sheer force of my attack sent him sliding back a foot with a look of surprise. Oh! I muttered, seeing my opponent's reaction speed and skill. Not bad. With curiosity welling within me, I charged. My fists flew like sledgehammers toward my grey-haired classmate. Face twisting in exertion, Yu ducked and weaved under one of my haymakers before he tried to drive an elbow into my ribs. The popular crowd behind us roared as the strike landed with a dull thud. However, the crowd quickly grew silent as they saw my palm holding Yu's elbow before it could touch my torso. Seeing this, Himiko and my oddball group all cheered. +8 SP, you're fast, Yu said with an impressed look as he tried to force me back but failed to move me even half a centimeter. And strong. How observant. Grabbing Yu's arm with lightning speed, I yanked him forward and smashed a brutal knee into his midsection. Yu gasped, the air driven from his lungs. Letting him go, I watched as he grunted in pain, but he quickly leaped back. As he regained his footing, he spun into a back fist. I watched his attack fly harmlessly past my jaw as I leaned back slightly. Kid's good. Very good. For a brat. Not bad, I said with a grin. But you're gonna have to hit me eventually to win. +5 SP, you responded with a flurry of strikes, a jab to my throat, which I blocked aside. A spinning elbow, I parried away. With a low sweep, I leaped away. Moving in, you blocked my jab but failed to avoid my hook punch into his ribs. You grunted, but he ignored his pain to bring his foot down like a hammer onto my knee. With a swing of my arm, I smacked him over his ear and threw his strike off target. Deciding it was time to end this spar, I dashed in and unleashed a volley of attacks. Panicking, you sidestepped, barely dodging the blows. His face was tight and fatigued as he tried his best to avoid my attacks, but more and more punches and kicks landed. You're pretty good, I said, landing a jab into his face. But you're slowing down. Hearing this, you finally lost his cool and charged, his movements heavy now. I ducked low, slipping under wild swing, and drove a fist into the side of his knee. The pink-eyed pretty boy bellowed in pain, his leg buckling. I seized the opportunity and spun into a flying knee that connected squarely with his jaw. But I was careful to hold back so I wouldn't break it. His eyes went blank for a second before he collapsed onto the ground. Enough. Cementos called out as he moved between us. This spar is over. I nodded at the teacher and walked over to a panting and injured you. You're a pretty decent fighter, you. +5 SP. That's all you have to say. You panted before a small smile erupted on his usually calm and stoic expression. You're a monster, Shimizu-san. Why, thank you. General POV, I can't believe it. Shimizu beat Taijima-san. He just got lucky. If Taijima-kun used his quirk, then Shimizu would have lost in the blink of an eye. Leaning on the wall behind the chattering students, Aizawa Shota watched as Sauta pulled you up onto his feet while Cementos was steadying the injured boy. Impressive. This kid's got potential, Shota thought. Shimizu Sauta. Quirkless. Even so, his skills, strength, and speed are on another level. Humming, Shota leaned forward and walked out of the training area with a thoughtful expression. As he turned the corner, Shota saw a poster of Endeavor on the wall bulletin board. Pausing, Shota stared at the number 2 hero and thought back to the meeting he and several of his fellow pro heroes had a while back, several days ago. Shota stood in the large, private hospital room with a heavy frown. His eyes scanned over his colleagues' injured forms with a regretful light. Best Genist, Hakamada Tsunagu, was covered in heavy bandages while 4 fluids were being passed into his system. The man was in a medically induced coma. Ingenium, Ida Tensai, had his leg in a cast while propped up on a pillow, and his face was etched into disappointment. Crust, Kanemoto Tsuyoshi, had a neck brace below his head, and his face held slight bruises and cuts. Down below, his chest, right leg, and left arm were covered in thin casts. Edge shot, Kamihara Shinya was leaning against the back wall, his body covered in light bandages. The man's eyes were closed, but from his crossed arms, his fists were shaking in rage. Mirko, Usajiyama Rumi, was lying on her hospital bed with her legs crossed and arms under her head. She was wrapped in bandages while a pensive and irritated look rested on her expression. Midnight, Kiyoma Nemurai was pacing back and forth with an annoyed and disappointed expression as her hands were clenched tight. Finally, Endeavor, Todoroki Enji, stood next to his own bed while only a few scattered bandages could be seen on him. The man's expression was one of anger and impatience. How long must I wait here? Enji said gruffly as he crossed his arms, his blue eyes looking over to the door next to Shota with annoyance. I could be back in my agency working to find Sukuna. And do what? Lose? Rumi said with a grin, causing the number 2 hero to turn to her with a glare. If you haven't realized it, number 2, you're no match for that guy. And you were. TCH. Rumi rolled her eyes and hopped onto her feet. If it wasn't for that beam of death, I would have beat him. Shota rolled his eyes and walked over to his longtime friend, Nemurai, to place a hand on her shoulder, stopping her non-stop pacing. Easy. What happened back there wasn't your fault. My quirk should have worked on him. Nemurai frowned and turned to him. He should have been knocked out right there and then. Maybe it was that mask that helped him avoid the effects of my quirk. Regardless of how Sukuna did it, it doesn't change the end result, Shota said as he guided Nemurai to sit. But, if I had gotten there in time, I could have turned off his quirk, or quirks, so you all could have stopped him. This was on me. It wasn't your fault, you were several miles away. Erase your head, Shinya said as he opened his eyes. You hold no blame. The blame lies with all of us for failing to bring that villain down. Some pros you all are. Rumi called out with a huff. Even with larger numbers, Sukuna still beat you all. Pathetic. Looking down at her hands, the rabbit hero gritted her teeth as a frustrated growl escaped her. I just need one more shot. I'll beat him for sure. Despite Rumi's frustration, her eyes became soft as a confused frown grew on her expression. Sukuna could have easily avoided that blast that night. But he ended up saving me and everyone else in the way. Why would he do that? What's his game? Rumi thought. Stepping into the room with a tired look, Tsukochi Naomasa scanned everyone in the room. Seeing everyone present, the detective walked over to the center and took off his hat. I'm sorry for being late, Naomasa began. I'll keep this brief. I just got off the phone with the chief and the chairman of the HPSC. As of now, all task forces created to apprehend the villain Sukuna have been dissolved. Furthermore, any individual hero attempting to take down Sukuna is now prohibited. We also need to address another important matter, the creature that Endeavor fought. There is a new mysterious third party involved with significant resources we must be cautious of. You can't be serious. What? This can't be. Then who will stop Sukuna? Damn that. In response to the hero's heated comments and questions, Naomasa rubbed his tired face and raised a hand. These decisions weren't made by me. They came from higher up. I'm sorry, but as we've just witnessed, having a large number of heroes isn't sufficient to take down Sukuna. He has demonstrated that he is too powerful for any ordinary hero to confront. Blinking, Shota stood up and glared at the detective. You're saying, only he can take him down. Before Naomasa could respond, a tall man with large muscles entered the hospital room, dressed in a red, blue, yellow, and white costume. He had chiseled features, including a strong jawline, pronounced cheekbones, and bushy eyebrows. His short blonde hair was swept back, with two distinct tufts sticking up slightly on either side of his head. A wide smile stretched across his face. All Might. Endeavor hissed under his breath as the number one hero's powerful presence filled the room. Fear not, for I will bring Sukuna to justice, All Might declared, his form radiating absolute strength. On that, I promise. Present. Sighing, Shota rubbed his eyes and continued on his way toward the main campus. Even with the assurances that All Might was now focused on Sukuna's capture, Shota could not help but feel anxious. Perhaps it had to do with Detective Naomasa's parting words to him. Erase ahead. You'll be acting as All Might's support. Your quirk will prove invaluable in stopping Sukuna from using his many quirks. Naomasa said as he handed Shota a classified folder. I just need some sleep. Shimizu Saotapu. Now out of my gym uniform and back in my school uniform, Himiko and I were walking out of the school's main gates in a comfortable silence. You can't imagine all the people that were in disbelief that you beat that pretty boy, Himiko said as she held onto my blazer as we traveled down the stairs. Still, their expressions were pretty hilarious. Which reminds me, why'd he want to fight you anyway? Is this another form of bullying I don't know about? No, nothing like that. I shook my head as I looked back at her. He just wanted to see where he stood when it came to martial arts. Ooh. It's like that anime Eri-chan and I are watching. So he's like your fated rival or something, right? I'm not sure if I'd call him my rival. Maybe a decent warm-up to the warm-up. Plus 10 SP. Just before we could leave the school's premises, a loud and cheerful voice called out behind me. Shimizu-kun. Shimizu-kun. I finally found you. Running towards us was none other than a beaming Heido Najira. Walking behind her in amusement were two other individuals, one of whom was a Majiki Tamaki, who I'd already met. The other, however, was a tall, muscled blonde with small eyes and a large, happy smile on his face. It's Tintin. I mean Tagata Mirio. Jumping in front of Himiko and me, Najira smiled widely at me as she got into my personal space. I've been looking everywhere for you, Shimizu-kun. I tried looking through each first-year class, but I never could find you. Turning to Himiko, Najira somehow smiled wider. Oh, who's this? With a raised eyebrow, Himiko turned to me with confusion over our overly excited upperclassmen. This is Toga Himiko, a friend of mine, I said before motioning to Najira. Himiko, this is Heido Najira, our senpai. Plus 25 SP. While she still wasn't entirely sure what was going on, Himiko smiled at our periwinkle senpai and gave her a slight bow. It's nice to meet you, Hado senpai, she said before wedging herself between Najira and me. Apparently, Himiko didn't like how close our rather pretty senpai was getting to me. It's nice to meet you too, Toga-chan. As if suddenly remembering her two friends, Najira waved over at Tamaki and Mirio. These two are my good friends. Amajiki Tamaki and Tagata Mirio. Say hello to your kohais, you too. Tagata Mirio. It's nice to meet you too. Mirio smiled brightly as he waved at us. And also, welcome to UA. Amajiki Tamaki. Hello. Tamaki said with his head down. Looking up, he flinched when he noticed my stare and returned to staring at the floor. It's nice to meet you too. Please take care of us. Himiko said with a small respectful bow, while I simply gave them a nod. Sup. Plus 25 SP, plus 30 SP, plus 25 SP. Mirio laughed at my greeting and walked closer to me with a hand under his chin. He hummed as he looked me up and down. Heido-san was right. You do have this negative feeling about you. How interesting. He said with a laugh before patting me on the shoulder as if we were longtime friends. I'm sure you must get stopped by the police a lot because of it. Just kidding. Actually, I do, I muttered in annoyance as I recalled the several times patrolling officers stopped to talk to me whenever I was out in the city. For real. Mirio said. For real, real. Plus 20 SP, plus 20 SP, plus 20 SP, oh. I have a great idea. Najira said with a cute hop, causing her rather ample chest to move. I watched them bounce around before quickly looking off to a far-off tree as I felt Himiko's stare fall on me. As your senpai Is, we'll treat you two to some ice cream. What do you all think? That sounds like a wonderful idea. Mirio said with a smile as Tamaki sighed before nodding. Works for me. The shy boy said. I'd rather go home, but I'm not gonna pass this chance at making points up. Sure, that sounds good, I said with a nod before turning to Himiko. What do you think? That sounds fun. Count me in. Himiko said with an excited smile before grabbing onto my right arm. She then turned to Najira and her smile somehow grew wider. Thank you for inviting us. Of course. Now let's go. I know this great spot a few minutes from here. Najira said, oblivious to Himiko's unsaid message as she walked in front of us. Turning to my clingy blonde friend, Najira began asking several questions as we walked to the ice cream shop. Wow. You have sharp teeth and cat-like eyes. Does your quirk have something to do with cats? Najira said before her eyes grew wide as she gasped loudly. Jumping in front of me, she leaned into my personal space again and stared into my eyes. I can't believe I forgot to ask you, Shimizu-kun. But what's your quirk? Scratching the back of my head, I gave her, Mirio, and Tamaki a grin. Ah, I'm actually quirkless. Plus 55 SP, plus 55 SP, plus 75 SP, A. Even if I don't have a quirk, can I become a hero? Izuku looked down at the streets below with a heavy frown. Off in the distance, he seemingly ignored a rising pillar of smoke. His scarred hands clenched onto the stall railing tightly as his question repeated inside his head. I guess, this is why they say never to meet your heroes, Izuku muttered as he walked away from the railing toward the rooftop staircase. As he traveled down the building with his yellow backpack, Izuku's dull green eyes remained focused enough for him not to trip down the stairs. Pros are always risking their lives. These days, more than ever. I cannot simply say, you can become a hero without a quirk. If you want to help others, then you could also become a police officer. Listen up, Deku. Twin Tails may have a small chance due to her quirk not being useless. But you? I don't care how much useless training you've been doing, but you don't have a chance in hell to get into UA. So don't even think about it. Izuku slammed his fist into the wall beside him with a wince. The words from both his idol and old friend replayed through his mind. Clenching his eyes tightly, the green-haired boy took a deep breath and continued down the stairs. No. I can't let what they say stop me. I already made up my mind that I would become a hero. Quirk or no quirk. If I gave up now, I'd be spitting in the faces of everyone who helped and believed in me. Sauta-san, Hei-san, Hatsume-san, Toga-san, and Shinso-kun. They all said I could become a hero. Even if my idol says I can't, I'll keep moving forward and make my dream a reality. Despite the laughs and jeers from his classmates, Izuku remained unfazed by their reactions when his teacher announced his goal of entering UA. Katsuki's insults and threats for him to stay away from UA were ignored. Izuku had grown too far to flinch in fear at his former friend. No, his bully's threats, any longer. Even without a quirk, Izuku knew he had value and potential. That potential reared its head when he managed to evade that sludge villain's attempts to gain control of his body until All Might finally arrived. After All Might defeated the sludge villain in the blink of an eye and was about to leave, Izuku acted on impulse and grabbed onto his leg as he soared through the air. It was only due to his countless hours of training that Izuku was somehow able to hold on during their flight. When All Might landed, Izuku realized he needed to ask the same question he once posed to his dear friend and teacher. Even if I don't have a quirk, can I become a hero? After he asked his question and glanced over to gauge the number one hero's reaction, Izuku noticed that All Might had transformed into a completely different person. Rather than the towering symbol of strength he was known to be, All Might now appeared as a small and frail man, looking as though he could be knocked down by a mere gust of wind. All Might revealed that he had sustained serious injuries in a battle 5 years ago, which had left him in a weakened state. This injury limited him to only 3 hours each day to act as a hero. For Izuku, learning this truth about his idol was disheartening, but it highlighted that the life of a professional hero is fraught with dangers, even for the number one hero. All Might's revelation that Izuku's dreams and aspirations were unattainable crushed him. According to his lifelong idol and hero, without a quirk, becoming a hero was a foolish goal. Exiting the building All Might had landed them on, Izuku forced a smile on his face as he ran toward the direction of the far-off chaos further into the Tatooine shopping district. I wonder what hero will show up, Izuku said as he quickly moved in and out of the worried crowds. Deep within the flaming shopping center, a large crowd of people watched on as a young man with ash-blonde hair struggled to escape the hold of a sludge-like monster with large eyes and a mouth. The ash-blonde boy, Bakugo Katsuki, roared as he released several explosions in an attempt to escape the villain's hold. Let me go. We can't get close to help with all these explosions and fires. One of the heroes at the scene raised an arm over his face as a gust of smoke flew past him. All around him, several other heroes watched on as Katsuki struggled and unleashed his quirk. If the boy doesn't stop, we won't be able to help. Off down the chaotic street, Mount Lady winced as she nervously looked around the area. Unfortunately for her, due to her size, she was unable to get any closer to help. Fire and wood don't mix. I'll let another hero handle this. Kamu Woods said as he sprinted through the shopping district with both of Katsuki's followers within his arms. Looking around, Backdraft released several water jets onto the roaring fires through his arms and shoulder-mounted water hose. Where are the fire trucks? Can any of you move in to help? Despite their pro-hero status, the assembled heroes hesitated to assist Katsuki. The ongoing explosions and flames made it impossible for any of their quirks to be effective in the current situation. This left the watching crowd bewildered as they observed the heroes apparently doing nothing to save the boy, who was slowly suffocating. I'm pathetic. Standing all the way behind the crowds with his left hand clutching his injured side, Toshinori Yagi winced as he watched the ongoing pandemonium with a helpless grimace. If only I hadn't wasted all my time today. I can't believe I made a mistake like this after admonishing that fan. Yagi thought as another explosion rocked the district. Arriving at the Tatooine shopping district, Izuku stood on his toes to try and catch a glimpse of the ongoing battle. His eyes scanned each of the gathered heroes and found that Mount Lady and Karma Woods were on the scene. Even Power Loader and Backdraft are here, too. It's too bad Heisan isn't here. There are a lot of pros. Izuku said with a grin before his sight finally landed on the villain deep into the flaming alley. Hold on, why is he here? Izuku said in shock, instantly recognizing the very same sludge villain who had tried to take control of his body earlier that day. Did it get away from All Might? No, those bottles. All Might dropped him, because of me. Izuku thought with horror as his shaking green eyes landed on the terrified red eyes of his classmate and old childhood friend, Kaisen. Without a second thought or moment to consider his actions, Izuku burst forward with quick speed. Weaving in and out of the gathered crowds, he leaped over the police barricades and the unmoving heroes with determination. Idiot! Stop! Power Loader yelled but made no effort to stop Izuku. Remember Sauta-san's teachings. Find your opponent's weaknesses and openings. Izuku thought as he quickly scanned the sludge villain's form. Combining his quirk analysis knowledge and combat skills, Izuku promptly grabbed the top of a nearby trash bin lid and threw it with as much strength as he could muster into the villain's right eye. Gah! The villain roared in pain as the trash lid found its target. My eye! Dashing in, Izuku jumped and landed a roundhouse kick into the villain's other eye. Roaring in pain, the villain's hold on Katsuki slackened. Seeing his chance, Izuku's hand snapped up and latched onto Katsuki's collar. With a great heave, he pulled back and managed to dislodge half of his classmate's body, ignoring the heat around him from the roaring fires. Not enough. Izuku hissed as the villain turned to him with a growl. Looking down, Izuku quickly apologized to Katsuki before using him as leverage to push himself up. With both hands on Katsuki's back, Izuku pulled his legs into his chest and then unleashed a powerful front kick that struck the villain's eyes once again. Gah! My eyes! Flipping back, Izuku roared and jerked Katsuki right out of the sludge villain's body, finally freeing him from his hold. The two middle schoolers fell onto the floor in a heap of limbs, Katsuki coughing and breathing heavily. Kaisen! Get up! We have to dash, you damn punk! Die! Izuku turned up to see the villain form its right hand into several long liquid spikes. With nothing left to do, Izuku moved over Katsuki's body and braced himself. Izuku awaited the searing pain of being skewered, but in the end, the pain never came. Looking up, Izuku saw All Might holding the villain's wrist within his grasp. I really am pathetic. All Might said as he turned to him within his muscled form. Even though I admonished you, I wasn't putting what I said into practice. With blood gushing from his mouth, All Might reared his other arm back. Pros are always risking their lives. Detroit. Smash. With explosive power, All Might carefully pinned Izuku and Katsuki down as he unleashed a right punch that caused over 145-mile-per-hour winds to rush through the streets. Moving quickly, the nearby pros all gathered and secured the nearby civilians just as the winds rapidly reached them. A few streets away, everyone turned up to see a wildly spinning tornado dance through the sky above the Tatooine shopping district with wide and confused eyes. Eventually, the powerful tornado finally died, causing the sky to darken and gray. Slowly, rain began to fall over the area as both heroes and civilians alike turned to All Might, standing in the now-ruined shopping center with his left arm raised in victory. That was awesome, Izuku said as he somehow maintained his consciousness throughout All Might's display of unmatched power. Unknown to everyone below, a hidden figure dressed in a long black cloak and mask nodded before throwing an empty soda bottle down onto the rooftop he stood on. Resting on his shoulder, a black crow with small red markings on the side of its head squawked. Good work, Izuku. Turning around, the cloaked figure began walking away before he melted into a swirl of cursed energy while the crow flew off into the sky. You're pouting. I'm not pouting. Plus 15 SP. Najira's lack of respect for personal space and her constant questions have led Himiko to misinterpret how our senpai views me. During our after-school ice cream trip with the future Big Three, Najira has shown excessive curiosity about me ever since I mentioned that I am quirkless. Because she didn't have much personal space, our periwinkle-haired senpai was practically hanging off my left arm while she questioned me about what it was like to be quirkless. Her actions seemed to irritate Himiko intensely, while Mirio couldn't help but chuckle at the situation. What caught my attention the most was the annoyed glances Tamaki had thrown me whenever Najira touched me. That boy had it bad for the blue-haired bundle of curiosity. How interesting. Returning to my current spa, I smiled at Himiko as she ducked under quick swing from my wooden bokken. I slid in and swung my weapon diagonally at her, and she blocked my strike with a wince. Himiko huffed and decided to go on the offensive. With quick movements, I blocked each of her attacks with swift precision. The clacks from our bokkens crashing into each other echoed within my dojo as we danced around one another. Admit it. Admit that Heido-senpai is cute. Himiko said with a glare as she slashed the air above my head. Spinning around her, I bumped her back with the bottom of my bokken, causing her to stumble forward. Well, Heido is a cute girl. But what does that have to do with anything? I jumped back as she launched a roundhouse kick at my midsection. Wait, don't tell me you're plus 25 SP. Don't say it. Himiko screamed with a red face as she threw her bokken down and engaged me in a hand-to-hand fight. Seeing her flustered face, I felt a mischievous grin grow on my face. Parrying a left jab, I grabbed her wrist and pulled her in by the small of her back. Say what? That you're jealous. Himiko blushed brightly as our chests pressed onto one another. Besides, I think you're pretty cute, too. Plus 100 SP, AR. Closing her eyes, Himiko squeaked cutely and swung her right hand up. Unprepared for her punch, my head snapped back as a fist struck my chin. Gah. Ma Tug. Sorry. Using RCT, I healed my once bleeding tongue and chuckled at Himiko's embarrassed expression. Nice one. I can't remember the last time you ever hit me. Plus 25 SP. That's because there was no last time. Ooh. Good job. Himiko twirled one of her blonde locks as she stared down at the dojo's wooden floors, a soft blush over her cheeks. So, you think I'm cute? I stopped rubbing my hair and turned to her with an awkward smile. Yeah, I do. At my answer, Himiko took a deep breath and slowly walked toward me. Her determined gold cat-like eyes looked into my own as her face was now barely a few centimeters away. Plus 45 SP, Sukuna-kun, Himiko whispered as she reached out and grabbed my hands in her own. Can we talk? About that night. It seems we're finally addressing the elephant in the room. Oh, that night. I looked down at our joined hands as she rubbed her thumbs over my scarred knuckles. When you... Yeah, when I almost kissed you. Himiko's face became bright red as she avoided my gaze. Sighing, I pulled away, causing her to frown. You have feelings for me, don't you? I do. Plus 55 SP. A long silence weighed heavily within the dojo as we stood awkwardly in front of one another. After taking a deep breath, Himiko placed her hands over her chest as small tears began to pool at the edges of her eyes. Don't cry, Himiko. I'm not good with crying girls. Now, then, what I say next will determine the future of our relationship. I have to be careful. Himiko. I have feelings for you, too. But they're not exactly the same as your own. Like you told me before, I do love you. You're one of the few people I truly value in this world. However, that love I hold for you isn't romantic. I admitted as I looked into her eyes. Hearing my answer, her eyes became crestfallen. Reaching out, I held her cheeks and smiled softly. But that doesn't mean they can't change someday. Plus 75 SP. Himiko's eyes grew wide as a warm, happy smile grew on her face. A burning fire lit up behind her eyes at the fact that there was a chance for her feelings to someday reach me. Reaching up, she held my hands with her own. That's okay with me. I'll just make you fall for me then. So be prepared for that. Hearing her proclamation, I chuckled and brushed off her tears. I see. I'm looking forward to that day then. Moving in, Himiko hugged my chest tightly as her face pressed against me. She was positively brimming like a schoolgirl in love. Tentatively, I wrapped my own arms around her back, causing her to sigh in content. Was this the correct answer? The boy has been offered All Might's power, Sukuna-sama. Kro-Urom said with a slight bow as he rested on my forearm. However, it seems that the skinny man wishes to test the boy's will and dedication before passing on his quirk. I see. Good work, Urom. I stroked the crow's head and looked out at the dark forest in the distance. With that, I guess I don't have to worry about the future too much now. Things should proceed smoothly from here. I aim to please, Sukuna-sama. With nothing more to be said, Kro-Urom flew off my forearm and headed back to watch over Izuku. While I did feel a bit bad at keeping tabs on my green-haired friend, I had to ensure he received one for all. No matter what I had to do to make that happen. Who would have thought that Bottle would have missed Bakugo by a few kilometers? The whole timeline could have been messed up, even more than it already is. With a sigh, I leaped down from the roof of my house and went inside. Since it was around 3 in the morning, everyone was asleep. Rubbing my eyes, I stifled a yawn as I made my way toward my room for some much-needed rest. Sniff, sniff. Pausing, I turned toward the direction where I heard some muffled sobs. At the sound of the familiar, soft voice, I frowned and made my way toward it. "Hey!" I whispered as I softly knocked on her door. At my knock, Eri immediately grew silent. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm okay." Plus 10 SP, Eri was, in fact, not okay. Even after we had rescued her much earlier in the timeline from Chisaki, it seemed that the dead Yakuza boss's influence on her remained strong, like a weighted blanket made of trauma. A trauma I knew the girl tried to hide under her apparent happy demeanor around the house. Kaina, Eri's official caretaker, had told me that the girl had night terrors a few times a week, preventing her from getting a whole night's sleep. The only thing that seemed to ward off the nightmares was when Kaina stayed with Eri. It appeared the woman's presence considerably calmed the girl down. Knowing all this, I should have made my way over to Kaina and woken her up so she could help, but from the bags under the woman's eyes, I saw today. I knew she could use a full night's rest. Besides, Eri was my responsibility as well. It's about time I helped more than just on the financial side of things. Sighing, I walked inside her room and closed the door behind me. Peering through the darkness, I saw Eri sitting up on her bed with her knees tucked into her chest. Her cheeks had tear stains, and she buried her head behind her knees to avoid my eyes. Off in the corner, Jello turned to me silently before looking over to its ward. Sitting beside her, I turned to her and placed a hand on her back. Another bad dream. "Yes," Eri whispered with a sob. "I was back in that place. And he was there. He was, cutting me again." Eri said as she brushed her arms, which were covered with a long-sleeved shirt. She never liked wearing anything that exposed her scars. "Once I get idol transfiguration, I'll make those scars disappear." "Oh, eh." With a heavy frown, I brought her into my chest and held her close. Her trembling form pressed against my chest as her soft sobs grew stronger. "You're safe now, Eri. No one can hurt you anymore. I'm here to protect you. We all are." Plus 25 SP. I know. I just can't forget about him and everything he did. Eri whispered as she grabbed my shirt tightly while her head pressed into my chest, causing her tears to soak into my shirt. Feeling irrational anger burst into my chest, I took a calming breath and began to rock her back and forth gently. Closing my eyes, I thought back to something my original parents would do for me when I was a small child. I could faintly remember my own mother's voice, but I remembered the lyrics clear as day. I was never much of a singer, but this isn't about me. "Come, stop your crying. It will be all right. Just take my hand and hold it tight." I began to sing softly, causing Eri's crying to slowly stop as she turned up to me with wide eyes. Reaching out, I held her hand gently. "I will protect you from all around you. I will be here. Don't you cry. For one so small, you seem so strong. My arms will hold you and keep you safe and warm. This bond between us can't be broken. I will be here. Don't you cry. Cause you'll be in my heart. Yes, you'll be in my heart from this day on, now and forevermore." You'll be in my heart no matter what they say. You'll be here in my heart always. Once I finished singing, I felt my cheeks burning slightly due to never having sung to anyone before. Pulling away, I smiled down at Eri's wide eyes. Sorry, I'm not really a good singer, but my mom used to sing this for me to help me feel better when I was younger. Plus 100 SP. That was really good, Oni-chan. I like your voice. Eri said her new title for me was seemingly missed by her. I feel a lot better now. Thank you, she said as a small smile grew on her face. Can you stay with me, Oni-chan? Just until I fall asleep. You got it. Lying down on her bed, Eri snuggled into my chest as I hummed the song to her softly. After a few minutes, she finally fell asleep with a soft smile on her face. Before I could get up to head back to my own room, my eyes began to grow heavy. Despite myself, I quickly fell asleep beside Eri, her little hand clutching my own scarred one tightly.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.